Now the most important thing was to find Morong Qingcheng and explain everything clearly. Moreover, he was faintly worried. If it was the Shun family, then it would be fine. At least Morong Qingcheng wouldn't be in any danger. However, if this was done by the Palace of Gods of War, they might try to kill Morong Qingcheng. Lin Xian definitely wouldn't allow this to happen. Zhao Shui, use the Void Eye. I want to lock onto the Morong family's direction. Zhao Shui also knew about this matter, so she didn't hesitate. She quickly formed a seal with her hands, and the Void Eye quickly condensed above her head to investigate the situation. Soon, it found the Morong family. In the southwest direction, in front of a palace. They seemed to be breaking a seal. Hearing this, Lin Xian nodded. He then stomped his foot, and his entire body shot out like a shooting star. Zhao Shui's body fluttered as she followed behind Lin Xian like a fairy. The Morong family members were indeed breaking a seal. However, obtaining the treasures this time wasn't their ultimate goal. Their ultimate goal was to lure Lin Xian out and capture him. They had had enough. These past few days, the other party had been robbing them. Each time, he had stolen most of their treasures. This made them very angry. Therefore, this time, they had set up a trap. They must capture the other party and teach him a good lesson. After all, the Morong family was a king family. They wouldn't allow anyone to provoke them. This time, Morong Qingcheng didn't refuse either. She also wanted to capture the other party and reveal his true identity in front of everyone. The seal was quickly being broken. Morong Qingcheng and the others had serious looks on their faces as they quickly scanned their surroundings. The reason for that was because they knew that the moment the seal was truly broken would be the moment Lin Xian came out. Indeed, the moment the seal was broken, the void rippled and an array of golden light shot towards them. It was like a startling rainbow. This attack was extremely swift and fierce. However, what shocked everyone was that this attack was not aimed at the treasures. Instead, it was aimed at one of the Morong family cultivators. Boom! A deep sound rang out. Then, the Morong family cultivator was sent flying. There was a terrifying sword wound on his body. Kid, you're digging your own grave. The Morong family members were thoroughly enraged. They never thought that the other party would dare to attack them. Lin Xianzi had been much more powerful the previous 3 times. Their treasures had not attacked them at all. Therefore, they had assumed that Lin Xian would not attack them. However, this time, the other party had immediately harassed their master. They didn't even have the time to investigate. Ah, you've gone too far. One of the Morong family elders roared angrily towards the sky. A terrifying spiritual energy exploded from his body. This time, he must capture the other party. The other cultivators were exceptionally enraged as well. All of them blocked the other party's path. Morong Qingcheng was also stunned. She couldn't understand why Lin Xian would attack her clan members. She simply couldn't believe it. However, if this was a fake Lin Xian, then where was the real Lin Xian? Why hasn't he emerged after so many days? Her heart was in a mess. However, at that moment Lin Xian sneered and his sword lit up once again. Chapter 1200. This was because those disciples had not reached the 7th level of the honorable realm, so they could not resist his sword energy. How dare you, kid? I'm going to kill you. Despicable. Come at me if you have the guts. The group of Morong family elders roared angrily and charged forward with all their might. However, the figure did not fight them at all. Instead, he chose to attack a few disciples. A ray of sword light was like a murderous sword as it swiftly slashed toward a disciple's head. This attack was extremely sharp. If the disciple was hit, he would definitely die. The elders behind him roared angrily, but they could not stop it in time. In an instant, everyone's faces were filled with rage and despair. The disciple who was being attacked was even more dazed as he stood rooted to the ground. This was because he could not dodge it at all. Just as everyone thought that the disciple was about to die, the void suddenly fluctuated. A ray of ice flew past and formed an ice wall, instantly blocking the sword energy. Then, another ray of lightning flashed and shattered the sword energy. This action was extremely swift, and was completed in an instant. Lin Xian gasped softly, because he did not expect that someone would be able to block his attack. Then, his face darkened as he looked behind him. His pupils shrank as he stood rooted to the ground. She was not the only one who was stunned. Everyone was stunned as well. The Morong family cultivators' minds were blank as they stared in front of them in disbelief. Morong Qingqing heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that she had guessed correctly. It turned out that the people who had appeared behind them were Lin Xian and Zhao Shui. The Morong family members did not expect to see two Lin Xian at the same time, so they stood rooted to the ground in shock. Morong Qingqing knew that her guess was correct. This meant that the Lin Xian from before was a fake. This way, the crisis between Lin Xian and her family could be considered resolved. At this moment, even the Morong family elders understood what had happened. They glared fiercely at the figure. So you're a fake. Speak, what's your motive for deliberately trying to destroy us? Why are you wasting your breath on him? Capture him. I want to see who he really is. I don't care which power they belong to. Since they dared to provoke the Morong family, we must take revenge. The elders shouted coldly, their eyes burning with anger. It was too dangerous. If it weren't for Lin Xian and Zhao Shui's timely appearance, they would have suffered heavy losses. Moreover, in the future, they would take revenge on Lin Xian and Zhao Shui. This way, the person who acted in the dark would benefit from it. The Morong family had dominated the Sky Martial continent for so many years, and had never been schemed against by others. Thus, they could not swallow this anger. Lin Xian sneered as he looked at the figure. You're pretty smart. Even I couldn't identify you. On the other hand, the fake Lin Xian had an ugly expression on his face. He didn't expect to meet the real Lin Xian at this time. This was something he had never expected before. Because the real Lin Xian hadn't appeared for the past few days, he didn't take it to heart. Furthermore, before he made his move, he had placed spies in the surroundings. As soon as the real Lin Xian appeared, those spies would sound the alarm. When that happened, he would immediately leave. However, he never expected that the spies he had placed would be discovered by Lin Xian and Zhao Shui. Furthermore, they had been silently killed by the two of them. Therefore, Lin Xian and Zhao Shui's arrival didn't alarm anyone. Naturally, the fake Lin Xian didn't know about it. The fake Lin Xian gritted his teeth and said, "Brat, you're lucky today. However, one day, you'll fall into our hands." With that, he took out 2 balls of light the size of longhans from his storage ring. Then, he violently smashed them into the air. Instantly, the 2 balls of light collided and exploded with a light more dazzling than the sun. In an instant, it enveloped the entire space. The light was so intense that even a venerable one wouldn't dare to look directly at it. Therefore, as soon as the light appeared, many Morong clan warriors cried out in pain. The other warriors were so frightened that they closed their eyes, not daring to look directly at it. Damn it, we've been hit! A group of Morong clan elders roared angrily. Then they reached out with their soul power, trying to capture the fake Lin Xian. However, in addition to taking out 2 balls of light, the fake Lin Xian sprinkled a layer of light powder on his body. Instantly, the probing from their soul power was blocked. The fake Lin Xian sneered and was about to leave. However, at that moment, A ray of light fiercely slashed at him and stopped him. What? This is impossible. How did you discover me? The fake Lin Xian was stunned. He didn't expect anyone to be able to track him. After all, the two balls of light he took out were known as the sun god's balls. They could be said to be the best treasures for escaping. Once the light was released, no one below the king level dared to look directly at it. Moreover, the light powder he sprinkled had the effect of isolating soul power. Therefore, as long as he took out these two treasures, he would definitely be able to escape safely from the army. However, he didn't expect that as soon as he moved, someone would block his path. How could he not be shocked? He didn't know that Zhao Shue's virtual sky eye was extremely mysterious. Furthermore, it had just finished evolving. What others couldn't do, the virtual sky eye could do. Therefore, as soon as the fake Lin Xian moved, the virtual sky eye locked onto him. Seeing that the light from the sun god's balls was getting weaker and weaker, the fake Lin Xian was very anxious. If the light disappeared, he wouldn't be able to escape. At that time, he would have to bear the wrath of the entire Morong clan. Thinking of this, his heart trembled. Damn it, get out of my way! The fake Lin Xian slashed out with his sword. Resplendent sword light filled the sky and quickly cut through the void. Playing with a sword in front of me? You're still too inexperienced. Lin Xian lifted a finger, and a beam of sword qi quickly flew out from his fingertip. This sword qi contained the three attributes of wind, thunder and fire. It could be said to be extremely powerful. It was like a shocking rainbow that instantly cut through the void. Wherever it passed, raging waves crashed against the shore. Terrifying spiritual energy instantly filled the surroundings. The two beams of sword qi collided without any pause. Lin Xian's sword qi instantly sliced his opponent's sword qi in half. Then, it slashed forward in an even more violent manner. How is this possible? The fake Lin Xian was shocked. He couldn't believe that his opponent could break through his sword qi so easily. After all, he was a 7th level honorable realm cultivator. That sword attack just now was his most powerful attack. Even a cultivator of the same level would need to use all their strength to deal with it. However, his opponent had merely moved a finger and broken through his attack. This was simply too unbelievable. He was even a little dazed. Just as the two of them were exchanging blows, the light that filled the sky disappeared. Then the Morong clan members regained their vision. Chapter 1201. Then the cultivators of the Morong family charged into the sky and quickly captured the fake Lin Xian. There was no other way. No seventh heaven honorable realm cultivator could escape from so many powerful cultivators. Speak. Who are you? Hurry up and reveal your true face. Otherwise, I have 100 ways to make you regret being born in this world. The cultivators of the Morong family gritted their teeth and used their fierce techniques. Soon, the fake Lin Xian could not hold on any longer and revealed his true face. It was a middle-aged man with the Shen family emblem on his body. Therefore, the people of the Morong family recognized him at a glance. The Shen family. It's the Shen family. The elder of the Morong family was shocked when he saw this. Then he asked in a low voice. Speak. Why is the Shen family attacking the Morong family? What other schemes do you have? The middle-aged man was about to cry. No, there's no other scheme. We only attacked because we wanted to destroy the intimate relationship between Morong Qingqing and Lin Xian. Under such circumstances, the middle-aged man consciously confessed everything. Then, the faces of the Morong family members darkened. Morong Qingqing was so angry that her face turned pale. She did not expect the damned ninth prince to be so despicable as to come up with such a plan. If Lin Xian had not arrived in time and broken the other party's scheme, the Morong family and Lin Xian would have fought to the death. Thinking of this, she felt a lingering fear in her heart. Damn Shen family. They've gone too far. The cultivators of the Morong family were furious. No, I can't take this lying down. I have to talk to them. What does the Shen family have to be so arrogant? We're all sovereign families. If we really fight, who's afraid of whom? These people were furious. However, Morong Qingqing looked at Lin Xian. What do you think? The Shen family is so vicious. We can't let them go. However, they're a sovereign family after all. They're powerful. If we fight them head-on, I'm afraid both sides will suffer. At that time, our competitiveness in Deep Pine Hall will be greatly reduced. This is not a good thing for us. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Indeed, Lin Xian was right. However, there were still many people who were angry. They simply could not swallow this anger. Seeing their expressions, Lin Xian spoke again. I don't plan to beat them either, but we don't have to do it ourselves. Oh, it seems that you have a way. Morong Qingqing asked. Of course, an eye for an eye. Don't they like to frame others? Today, I will let them have a taste of this kind of framing. Then Lin Xian sneered. His body emitted a series of crackling sounds, and his face began to change. Finally, Elder Qing Yun stood in front of them. For a moment, everyone was stunned. The middle-aged man on the ground widened his eyes, as if he had seen this before. You. He pointed at Lin Xian, and was speechless for a long time. Shocking, too shocking. He did not expect that the other party would have such a method of disguise. Moreover, it was so exquisite that it was not inferior to his. Thinking of what the other party was going to do next, the middle-aged man felt a burst of fear. Needless to say, their Shen Jia was definitely going to be unlucky. However, he was now caught and could not send the news back. However, Morong Qingqing was still worried. Although I can't tell if you are real or fake, Master Qingjian's martial arts are all from the Shen family. Outsiders wouldn't know them. Don't worry about this. I have seen that old man fight, and have memorized all his moves. Lin Xian smiled and then punched out. This punch was very ethereal, like a cloud, without a trace. However, it was very terrifying. In an instant the void in front of it exploded. This is the limitless fist. The Morong family members were shocked. They did not expect Lin Xian to use the Shen family's martial arts. The middle-aged man from the Shen family was even more stunned. This scene was completely beyond his imagination. He did not understand how the other party did it. Lin Xian smiled and did not say anything. His palm stretched out again. This time, it was a large green hand that covered the sky. There were wood-like patterns on it. It was very mysterious. This palm easily tore space and time. This is the green cloud hand. Everyone once again sucked in a breath of cold air, because this green cloud hand was Elder Qing Yun's famous unique skill. However, they did not expect that Lin Xian would use it now. Moreover, they could not see any flaws at all. For a moment, everyone looked at Lin Xian and were all stunned. The middle-aged man's face was filled with despair. He knew that the Shun family was definitely going to be in big trouble this time. When did you learn the Shun family's martial arts? Morong Qingqing was very curious. Lin Xian smiled but did not say anything. He did not know any Shun family's martial arts. The reason why he could use the green cloud hand was because of the dragon sword soul in his body. The dragon sword soul was an offensive saint technique between heaven and earth. It could simulate and evolve everything. He had seen Elder Qing Yun attack before, so he was very clear about the other party's moves. It was not difficult for him to use the dragon sword soul to evolve it. The next thing was easy. Lin Xian would pretend to be Elder Qing Yun, and then sneak attack the Palace of Ares, causing the Palace of Ares to start a war with the Shin family. This way, he could deal a good blow to the Shin family, and not exhaust the Morong family's combat power. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. At the side, Zhao Shui used the Void Sky Eye and quickly locked onto the Shin family and the Palace of Ares. Then, Lin Xian's figure flashed, and quickly flew in the direction of the Palace of Ares. Haha, our luck is really good this time. We actually found two treasures at the same time. Duan Tianlang was very excited. Yen Feng has already gone to the other treasure. We must obtain the treasure in this place. Duan Tianlang was very confident because Yen Feng had already broken through to the 8th heaven supremacy. There were probably not many people in the Pine Palace who were his match. His cultivation had also increased greatly and reached the peak of the 7th heaven supremacy. As long as he did not encounter an 8th heaven supremacy, no one could defeat him. He was very confident about this. Under Duan Tianlang's lead, many cultivators from the Palace of Ares bombarded the light screen and quickly broke the seal. Looking at the treasures in front of them, the people from the Palace of Ares' eyes burned with passion. They laughed happily. However, the situation suddenly changed. A huge green hand covered the sky like a dark cloud and covered everyone. Then it slammed down. The void was torn apart, and the wind howled. A terrifying force surged down. In an instant, the expressions of the cultivators from the Palace of Ares changed. However, Duan Tianlang's face turned ferocious. How dare you? How dare you steal the treasures of the Palace of Ares? No matter who you are dead meat. He roared crazily and punched out. Chapter 1202. Duan Tianlang was infuriated. He did not expect that someone would dare to target the Palace of Ares. Moreover, the timing was perfect. It was the exact moment when they broke the seal. The other party must have been hiding nearby for a long time. However, he did not notice it before. He could not help but be shocked. However, he was relieved that the other party's aura had not reached the 8th firmament. It was really intolerable. Therefore, he was when confident they saw the person who attacked him down. Their faces immediately darkened. The entire void trembled. Duan Tianlang's expression changed again. Qing Yin, don't think that you can act recklessly just because you are from the Palace of Gods of War. An old figure appeared in the distance today. It was Elder Qing Yin from the Shin family. 9th young master Shin shouted angrily. Why did you attack us for no reason? Duan Tianlang didn't seem to hear him as he stared at Elder Qing Yin. Nonsense, of course. Explanation. The treasures. What explanation do you want? Your Palace of Ares has been lucky recently. Why didn't you give us an explanation when that old man Qing Yin snatched the treasures of the Palace of Gods of War? Everyone has a share. Why didn't you give us an explanation when he planned to attack the disciples of the Palace of Gods of War? How can we share them with you? You're asking me for an explanation. Don't you think it's ridiculous? On account that you are from the Shin family. The Shin family's martial artists were stunned. Otherwise, then they were enraged. Me for being rude. What kind of joke is this? You dare to teach me a lesson? Elder Qing Yin is with us this time. Snorted. Why would he attack the Palace of Gods of War? I was wondering why you were so arrogant. If you want to attack your cultivation has reached please find a better reason. 7th firmament using such a lousy reason to brush us off. It seems that you have benefited a lot these days. Do you really think we're idiots? Great. Don't talk nonsense with him. I will test your strength as a peak. This guy obviously wants to snatch the treasures of the Shin family. Elder Qing Yin attacked again. Martial artists the terrifying green palm Elder Qing Yin also snorted coldly. Since you are courting death, Duan Tianlang, I will fulfill your wish. Are you old and blind? Duan Tianlang why would I attack the Palace of Gods of War? Aura erupted whether from you did or not. Duan Tianlang displayed his powerful combat strength. Duan Tianlang sneered and quickly attacked. However, Elder
You're
Qin
courting
Yin did
death.
not fight him head-on.
Elder Qin Yin was
He only
enraged.
dodged quickly.
He didn't expect
Furthermore,
Duan
the
Tianlang
large green
to attack
hand
him
had
directly
snatched away
without
many
any
consideration for his
and even
feelings.
injured many of
This
the
made him
palace of
furious.
arrest martial
One
artists.
had to know that they
In
were
the
in the
end,
Shen family's
Elder
territory
Qin Yin
now.
returned with a
With a
full
cold
load.
snort,
Only
Elder
Duan
Qin Yin
Tianlang was
stretched
left
out his
roaring at the
Qin Yin
sky,
hand and grabbed
and a group
forward.
of cultivators
If it was
wailing on the
before,
ground.
he and Duan
Aggrieved it was
Tianlang's
too
strength
aggrieved.
were on par.
Duan
However,
Tianlang's lungs
Duan
were about to
Tianlang
explode.
had just broken
the other
through
party
to the
was
peak
clearly
of the
weaker
seventh
than
heaven
him.
of the
If they were
supremacy
to fight
realm
head-on,
recently.
he was
Therefore,
confident that
Elder
he could
Qin
defeat
Yin
the other
couldn't
party.
defeat Duan Tianlang
However,
at all.
that Elder
Therefore,
Qin Yin
after
didn't
one
fight
strike
with him at all.
Elder Qin Yin
Furthermore,
was beaten back
he
again and
specifically
again.
targeted the
He was
weaker
even injured.
disciples.
Immediately,
This caused Duan
the
Tianlang
surrounding
to be
Shen family's
incomparably
martial
furious.
artists were enraged.
It was as if he had
They no
punched
longer
cotton,
cared about the rules
unable
of
to
the
exert
underworld
any strength
and
at all.
quickly rushed forward.
Furthermore,
Although
he had just
Duan
advanced to the
Tianlang's
peak
cultivation
seventh heavenly
had
layer
reached the peak
exalted
of
realm,
the seventh heaven
he was
of the
extremely
supremacy
proud of
realm.
himself.
He wasn't
But he never
invincible.
expected to
In
receive
addition,
such a blow.
the Shen
In
family's
the next
martial
moment,
artists
he
were
let
all
out a
experts.
furious roar.
Therefore,
His figure
it didn't
flickered
take
as he
long for
quickly
him
flew
to
towards
escape
Elder
with serious
Qin Yin.
injuries.
That Elder
After
Qin Yin
beating
was
Duan
naturally not
Tianlang
real.
away,
But
the
Lin
Shen
Xian
family
in
had
disguise.
vented their anger.
At this moment,
Moreover,
he
they
was
didn't
flying
pay
in the
much
direction
attention
of
to
the
it.
Chen family.
However,
when he
Duan
arrived near the
Tianlang
Shen
couldn't
family,
take it lying
his
down.
figure flickered
After
and he hid
returning,
in the void.
he told the
It
other
didn't take
experts
long
of
for
the palace
Duan
of gods
Tianlang
of
to
war
catch
about
up.
this matter.
He released his soul power and quickly locked onto the Shen family's location. With a furious roar, Duan Tianlang slammed his palm forward. Boom! The trees in front of them collapsed, and the entire ground shook. However, amidst the violent shaking, angry roars could be heard. Then one figure after another soared into the sky, and powerful auras filled the surroundings. Who are you? How dare you sneak attack my Shen family? You must be tired of living. Countless angry voices could be heard. It was obvious that the Shen family's martial artists were enraged. One had to know that they were a sovereign family. They were usually supreme existences. However, someone actually dared to sneak an attack on them. Then, the people of the Palace of Gods of War discussed it, and felt that they should counterattack again. If this was in the past, they might have thought about it for a long time. After all, the other party was also a sovereign family. If they attacked rashly, both sides would suffer losses. However, it was different now. They had just broken through a few days ago, and their strength had increased greatly. Originally, they were in high spirits and thought that they had already surpassed the other sovereign families. However, they didn't expect to suffer such a huge loss at this time. According to their character, how could they tolerate it? Therefore, not long after, Duan Tianlang, Yan Feng, and the others once again led the experts of the Palace of Gods of War to attack. This battle was naturally defeated by the Shen family, because they didn't have an eighth heaven supremacy present. Chapter 1203. Therefore, there was no suspense in this battle. Otherwise, the news of this battle would have quickly spread throughout the entire Pine Palace. All the factions knew that the Palace of Ares and the Shen family had fought, and the result was that the Shen family was defeated. Lin Xian, Morong Qingcheng, and the others naturally heard the news. Then they all laughed. They were naturally happy that the Shen family was defeated. However, other than being happy, they were also very surprised, because according to their original predictions, the Shen family and the Palace of Ares should have suffered heavy losses. However, they didn't expect that the Shen family would be defeated this time, and the Palace of Ares wouldn't suffer much damage. Therefore, they quickly inquired about the news. When they learned that Yan Feng had broken through to the eighth heaven of the Venerable Realm, they all gasped. This time, the various sects had sent many experts, but they were basically all seventh heaven venerables. It seemed that only the Sword Venerable Senior from the deity Sword Villa had an eighth heaven venerable. Other than that, there was probably no one else. However, Yan Feng had also broken through to the eighth heaven venerable realm. This was a huge threat to everyone. Lin Xian was also very surprised. He didn't expect Yan Feng to break through. It seemed that after they left that day, The people from the Palace of Ares should have also attacked the ancient tree. Perhaps they had obtained some fire phoenix fruits, which allowed Yanfeng to break through. Although he was very surprised by this news, he didn't take it to heart. So what if Yanfeng broke through? One had to know that he had also broken through. His cultivation had increased, and his dragon sword soul had also reached the 8th heaven. Lin Xian didn't even care about ordinary 8th heaven venerables, let alone Yanfeng, who had just entered the 8th heaven. Zhao Shui didn't have much of a reaction. Although she was only a peak 7th heaven venerable now, her true battle strength was not much weaker than an 8th heaven venerable. The people from the Morong family were more or less nervous. After all, the appearance of an 8th heaven venerable was still a huge threat to them. However, Morong Qingqing was very calm. This was because they had obtained many natural treasures these days. It wouldn't take long for her to break through. At that time, even if her cultivation couldn't reach the 8th level of the Venerate realm, her battle prowess definitely wouldn't lose to an 8th level Venerate realm cultivator with the true Phoenix Imperial Jade Seal in her hands. However, this matter still rang an alarm bell for them. In other words, within Pine Palace, anyone could break through. They had to find enough heavenly treasures to ensure that they did not fall behind others. A few days later, another major event occurred in Deep Pine Hall, shocking everyone. Somewhere in the Dark Pine Palace, an extremely sharp aura suddenly appeared. Then, a huge sword chi light pierced through the sky, shocking everyone. This ray of light only existed for an instant before disappearing into the sky. However, the shock it produced lasted for a long time. Because this aura was too terrifying, it made everyone tremble. Soon, all kinds of discussions broke out in the crowd. This aura is too terrifying. I'm afraid it has already surpassed the level of a half-earth tier treasure. Indeed, my weapon has already begun to tremble under that sword chi. This is definitely not the power of a half-earth rank artifact. It can't be an earth-step treasure, right? It's possible. For a moment, many warriors were excited as they all rushed towards the direction of the sword chi. Lin Xian was also very surprised. When the sword chi appeared, he also felt a sharp aura. Moreover, his Lone Star sword also began to tremble slightly. He knew that this was the sign of a peerless weapon being born. It seemed that there was a peerless weapon in this place. Moreover, from the light, it should be a peerless treasure sword. As a swordsman, Lin Xian would not miss such a good opportunity. Therefore, he and Zhao Shui moved and quickly flew in that direction. The people of the Morong family discussed for a while. Then, under the lead of Morong Qingqing, they also quickly moved forward. This sword chi not only alarmed the cultivators inside the Pine Palace, but also the heavenly netherbird outside the Pine Palace. Looking at the flash of light, the heavenly netherbird narrowed its eyes. I didn't expect that thing to still exist. I remember that it was broken a long time ago. However, even if it's just a fragment, I can't let it fall into the hands of those humans. There was a trace of fear in the heavenly netherbbird's eyes. But soon after, he revealed a sly smile. In the next moment, it waved its giant claws and a black flame formed in front of it. Then, it quickly transmitted its voice to the flame. At the same time, the warriors of the Divine Bird Palace in Deep Pine Palace seemed to have heard something. Their bodies suddenly stiffened, and their faces became extremely respectful. I need you to do something. If you succeed, you will be rewarded. The heavenly Netherbird's voice rang in the minds of the Divine Bird Palace warriors. Honorable Heavenly Netherbird, please speak. One of the elders said respectfully, You should have sensed the sword chi in the Dark Pine Palace, right? It's the aura of a weapon. I want you to immediately go to that place and get that weapon. Even if you can't get it, you can't let anyone else get it. Do you understand? Understood. The elder of the Divine Bird Palace said respectfully. But then he revealed a bitter smile. To be honest, although we are also a 6-star sect, we are still lacking compared to the other king families. Even if we want to, I'm afraid we don't have the strength to do it. Don't worry about this. Since I asked you to do it, I will naturally help you. The heavenly Netherbird's cold voice rang out. Now find 2 suitable people. I will help them reach the 8th heaven of the Venerable Realm in a short period of time. This way, I'm afraid there won't be any problems. 8th heaven of the Venerable Realm. Two people. Hearing this, the people of the Divine Bird Palace felt a chill. Then their eyes lit up. Although it was only a temporary increase in cultivation, the benefits were undoubtedly huge. For a moment, everyone's heart was burning. The elder was also stunned for a moment. Then he was ecstatic. However, he knew that this matter was of great importance. If it was not handled well, they might not be able to leave this place. Therefore, he began to carefully think about it. In terms of strength, this elder was undoubtedly the strongest. Therefore, he was determined to get one of the spots. However, he thought carefully about the other person. In the end, he did not choose from the older generation. Instead, he chose the most talented person in the younger generation. My lord, I've chosen. The seventh elder of the Divine Bird Palace took a step forward and stood in a conspicuous position. Beside him was a handsome young man. At this moment, the young man's face was filled with ecstasy. Chapter 1204. In the next moment, the seventh elder and the handsome Zhu Chun revealed a pained expression. This was because the black flame symbol, that was originally the size of a fingernail on the back of their necks, suddenly jumped. Black lines spread out from the black flames and quickly crawled all over their bodies. As the black flame covered their bodies, a terrifying aura burst out from the two. When the black runes completely covered their bodies, their auras reached a peak. As for the cultivators in the distance, they were pressed to the ground by this aura. Every one of them revealed a terrified expression. Eighth Heaven, Honorable Realm. Everyone was extremely envious and terrified at the same time. They did not expect the heavenly Netherbird to have such terrifying power. It could create two Eighth Heaven Honorables with just a raise of its hand. Isn't this method a little too terrifying? As for the seventh elder and Zhu Chun, they felt the surging power in their bodies. Then they laughed wildly. Eighth Heaven, Honorable Realm. This was a realm that they had dreamed of reaching. But now they had reached it so easily. How could they not be overjoyed? Although it was only a temporary increase, they believed that as long as they completed the mission, the heavenly Netherbird would be able to make them true Eighth Heaven Honorables. Lord, rest assured, we will complete the mission. The two said respectfully to the void. Good, I'll wait for your good news. But I have to remind you not to play any tricks. I can make the two of you stronger, but I can also destroy you in an instant. I hope you won't make a mistake. The heavenly Netherbirds' cold voice sounded. Hearing this, the seventh elder and Zhu Chun trembled. A trace of fear appeared in their eyes. The two hurriedly shook their heads to show that they would not betray it. Luckily, the heavenly Netherbird did not say anything, and they were not in any danger. They knew that the heavenly Netherbird believed them for now. Next, they would go all out to snatch the peerless weapon. The two of us will take care of the treasure. You stay here and look for other treasures, the seventh elder said to the other cultivators. Indeed, when the time came to snatch the treasure, it would definitely be the top experts. The rest of them would not be of any use, and might even become a burden. Therefore, the seventh elder did not let them go. After saying this, the two of them turned around and soared into the sky. The Pine Palace was huge. It was not any smaller than a huge city. At this moment, there was a cave in the southeast corner of the Pine Palace. This cave was extremely extraordinary. It gave off an ancient aura and a faint trace of sharpness. Because not long ago, the sharpness of the sword chi came from this cave. At this moment, there was a group of warriors standing in front of the cave. The person in the lead was an old man in plain clothes. Although this old man was dressed plainly and had an ordinary appearance, no one dared to look down on him, because he was the famous senior sword venerable of the deity Sword Villa. At this moment, the linen-clothed old man was standing in front of the cave with a grave expression. Honorable Sword Elder, what is this place? Why is there such a terrifying aura? The disciples of the deity Sword Deity. If my guess is correct, this should be a place for refining weapons. The plain-clothed old man looked at the cave ahead and said in a deep voice. Indeed, not only did the cave have a sharp and ancient aura, there was also a scorching heat wave faintly emitting from the cave. The heat wave was nothing at first, but if one stood in front of the cave for too long, even a venerable one would not be able to withstand it. Place of weapon refinement? The cultivators' eyes lit up when they heard this.
So there should be many ancient weapons inside? That's right. The linen-clothed old man nodded. Moreover, the sharp sword chi from before had been emitted from this place. It must be a peerless divine weapon to be able to release that sword chi. The Honorable Sword Senior's eyes were burning with passion. Although he was very old and had reached the end of his life, as a swordsman, his pursuit of treasured swords was endless. Therefore, he wanted to go in and take a look at the peerless divine sword. The Honorable Sword Senior had a yearning look on his face, but in the next moment he frowned and turned around. The sharpness in his eyes turned into a substantial sword chi and slashed forward. Who are you? Sneaking around. His voice was like thunder. As he spoke, the Honorable Sword Senior's aura changed drastically. An unusually sharp and powerful aura burst out from his body. He no longer looked like an ordinary old man. He was clearly a peerless swordsman. The huge sword chi slashed toward the void in front of him. Although everyone was puzzled and did not see who it was, they believed that as long as the Honorable Sword Senior took action, he must have his reasons. Sure enough, in the next moment, two figures flashed in the void and flew into the distance. These two people were the seventh elder and Zhu Chun of the Divine Bird Attack. Their faces were very ugly. They used their extreme movement techniques and quickly ran into the distance. Damn it, this old man is so powerful. We've already restrained our aura, but I didn't expect him to still find us. The seventh elder gritted his teeth. Zhu Chen's face was also solemn. This is the honorable sword of the deity Sword Villa. He's really terrifying. Indeed, although their cultivation had increased to the 8th heaven of the honorable realm, they still felt a chill down their spines when facing the honorable sword. Dodging the sword by a hair's breadth, the two of them fled to a safe place and quickly discussed the matter. Elder, what should we do? Zhu Chen asked. There's no hurry. Look at the cave. It seems to be protected by a powerful formation. I'm afraid it won't be easy to break that formation. Why don't we wait until those people break the formation and then secretly follow them in? In this way, we can preserve our strength and make a move at the critical moment. The seventh elder said in a deep voice. Then the two of them went into hiding. However, they still paid close attention to the cave in the distance. On the other side, the linen-clothed old man slashed out with his sword. When he saw the two figures running away, he frowned. He could naturally sense that the two figures who were running away had reached the 8th heaven of the honorable realm. Since when did the 8th heaven of the honorable realm from the deity Sword Villa enter? The linen-clothed old man was very confused. However, he shook his head slightly because he could not understand. However, he was not afraid. The strength that the other party had displayed before was not enough to fight against him. What he needed to do now was to enter the cave in front and obtain the exceptional divine weapon. In the next moment, the linen-clothed old man took a deep breath and walked forward. When he was about 10 feet away from the cave, he was suddenly greeted by a fiery red wave of air. Along with it was a scorching aura that melted the entire void.
Chapter 1205. Not only that, but a red light screen had also appeared in front of them, blocking their path. As expected, such a treasure vault must be protected by a powerful formation. The plain-clothed old man sighed and retracted his footsteps. Although he did not continue forward, the old man's eyes were very determined. It seemed that he was determined to obtain the divine weapon inside, because he had his own ideas. One had to know that they were not safe now. There was an extremely powerful heavenly netherbird watching them from the outside, and they did not have the strength to fight against it. However, if he could obtain the divine weapon, he might be able to pose a threat to the heavenly netherbird. By then, they would have the right to negotiate. At the very least, they should be able to protect the people from the deity sword manor. Therefore, he had to get his hands on this peerless divine weapon. However, the first step was to break the red array in front of them. The old man did not do that. He did not let the people from the deity sword manor start breaking the array. Instead, he waited quietly. This was because he knew that the sword light from before must have alerted everyone in the Pine Palace. Therefore, it would not be long before those powerful families and forces arrived. Therefore, he did not need to worry about the array in front of them. Indeed, before long, there was the sound of rushing air behind them. Then a group of cultivators landed quickly. The aura of the divine weapon. It's really here. A joyful voice was heard. Then there was a surprised voice. Deity Sword Manor? So it's Senior Sword Honorable. The people from the Deity Sword Manor turned around and realized that the people who landed behind them were from the Palace of Gods of War. The old man also turned around and looked behind him. Then he was surprised. He did not expect that the Palace of Gods of War would have 2 8th-level honorables. The 2 8th-level honorables were naturally Yin Feng and the mysterious honorable. Previously, the Palace of Gods of War had obtained some silver leaves and fire phoenix fruits, which had greatly improved the cultivation of many people. Among them, the ones who had benefited the most were Yin Feng and the mysterious Honorable Duan Tianxing. Yin Feng was a genius of the younger generation. He was extremely talented, so he had broken through to the 8th-level honorable at a young age. The mysterious Honorable Duan Tianxing had an even more extraordinary background. He was Duan Tianlang's senior brother and a powerful elder in the Palace of Gods of War. This time around, his strength had increased tremendously. Compared to Yin Feng, he was now slightly stronger. The appearance of the Palace of Ares alerted the deity Sword Manor. Now was a special time. There was a treasure trove of peerless divine weapons in front of them. The other party's intentions were obvious. Moreover, the 2 8th-level venerables made the people of deity Sword Villa feel a wave of pressure. Originally, the strength of the deity Sword Manor had been slightly weaker than a monarch family like the War God Palace. However, the arrival of Senior Sword Sovereign had greatly boosted their confidence. They believed that they could suppress the king clans. This was because, according to the information they had obtained, no 8th-level venerables had entered this time. However, they did not expect that 2 8th-level venerables would appear in the Palace of War. This surprised them greatly. Previously, the advantage that they had gained by relying on Senior Sword Honorable would be pulled closer to them. However, the linen-clothed old man was very calm. He did not take the 2 martial artists who had just become 8th heaven supremacies seriously. However, he was old after all. If he could avoid fighting, he would try his best not to. Hence, he did not say anything in the face of the powerful Palace of Ares. Duan Tianxing, Yin Feng, and the others were different from the people of Deity Sword Villa. As soon as they arrived, they quickly rushed forward to study the red array. Not long after, the martial artists of the other forces also arrived. At this moment, the linen-clothed old man finally spoke. Everyone, I know that everyone is anxious. However, if we don't break this array, I'm afraid no one will be able to enter. Hence, I hope that everyone will work together. Senior Sword Honorable, you're right. You have the highest seniority here. Why don't we leave this matter to you? An elder of Merry Woods said with a smile. As soon as he said that, the elders of the other forces nodded. The people of the Palace of Ares did not obviously support him, but they did not oppose him either. The linen-clothed old man nodded. Then he walked forward and led the crowd to study it. During this process, the Shen family and the palace of Ares were extremely jealous. They almost fought again. Fortunately, Senior Sword Honorable was there to suppress the situation. Thus, both sides stopped fighting. Swoosh. In the forest, two figures flashed. It was Lin Xian and Zhao Shui. The two of them naturally rushed to the cave in front of them. However, they did not go up to break the array. Instead, they waited quietly in the distance. It was not that they did not want to go up, but most of the forces had grudges with them. If they went up now, it would cause unnecessary trouble. They might as well wait for those people to break the array, and then follow in. Looking at this array, I'm afraid they will need some time to break it. The dark red divine dragon looked to the front and said, "Of course, if I help, I can reduce the time by half. This should be the twin blazing array. It is indeed difficult to break." Lin Xian looked to the front and said slowly, "Not bad, kid. You've improved. You can see through this array at a glance." The dark red divine dragon nodded continuously. Lin Xian smiled. It would be a waste if he did not learn a little from the dark red divine dragon, an array master. Now his array formation level could be considered as an array formation grandmaster. As long as it wasn't an ancient array formation, he could break any ordinary array formation. As they were talking, Lin Xian suddenly frowned and looked into the distance. Zhao Shui also showed a trace of doubt. Then, the two of them quickly withdrew their auras. Zhao Shui even used her void eye to form a golden vortex that wrapped the two of them. Naturally, they did so for a reason. That was because two figures had suddenly appeared in their northwest direction. The two figures were like ghosts. They moved very quickly, and did not make a sound. Even their auras were undetectable. As soon as they landed, they stared at every movement in front of them. However, they did not notice that there were two people hiding not far from them. Lin Xian and Zhao Shui were surprised when they saw the two figures. Divine Bird Palace, 8th Heaven Venerable. Lin Xian frowned. He was not surprised that people with the Divine Bird technique appeared here. But the aura of the other party shocked him. He did not expect that the other party had 8th Heaven martial artists, and there were two of them. This was too unexpected. Did the other party also get the silver leaf and the fiery phoenix fruit? Lin Xian was puzzled. But then he shook his head slightly. With the strength of the Divine Bird Palace, they should not be able to defeat the tree demon. Moreover, although the other party's aura was strong, it was very strange. There was even an aura that he was familiar with.
Chapter 1206. The Heavenly Netherbird? Lin Xian suddenly realized that the aura on the other party's body was very similar to the black flame aura he had collected along the way. At first, he didn't think of it, but after the dark red dragon's reminder, he realized that something was wrong. Why does the other party have such a strong black flame aura? This isn't normal. Lin Xian was puzzled. One had to know that even if the other party had a black flame imprint, it was impossible for the other party to have such an aura with just a trace of black flame. It seems that the Heavenly Netherbird is behind this. The dark red dragon understood. With that fellow's methods, it shouldn't be difficult to raise two people to the 8th heaven of the supremacy realm in a short period of time. Hearing this, Lin Xian gasped. As expected of the Heavenly Netherbird, it was indeed terrifying. It could create two 8th heaven supremacies with just a raise of its hand. This method was truly heaven-defying. However, this also made him very puzzled. He guessed that the Heavenly Netherbird had sent two 8th heaven supremacies to seize the peerless weapon in the cave. The other party was a demonic beast and had no use for the weapon. It should be that the weapon was a threat to it. Thinking of this, Lin Xian's eyes lit up. If he could obtain the peerless weapon, it might increase their chances of winning. Thinking of this, Lin Xian clenched his fists. He had to obtain the peerless weapon inside. Next, they just had to wait patiently. 2 days later, the fiery red formation in front of them finally dimmed and disappeared. Everyone's face was filled with ecstasy as they quickly dashed inside. However, immediately after, a few screams came from ahead. Many of them quickly retreated, their faces full of pain. Some of them were on fire, burning fiercely. A few powerhouses had to take action to extinguish the fire. Then, they looked ahead with very serious expressions. Previously, because of the red formation, although they felt a scorching aura, they didn't pay much attention to it. But now, the red array was gone, and the scorching aura of the bones was completely exposed in front of them. The energy caused their expressions to change. It was too terrifying. It was as if an endless sea of fire was going to burn them. The few martial artists who had screamed earlier were burned by this heat wave. However, despite the danger ahead, no one retreated. Instead, they quickly made preparations. Even if it was a mountain of swords or a sea of flames, these people would still step in without hesitation, let alone a heat wave. Sure enough, the group was well prepared and set off. The plain-clothed elder took the lead, and a bright sword radiance gushed out from his body. Then, his body swayed, and he charged forward like a beam of sword radiance. Wherever it passed, the fiery red airwaves were mercilessly torn apart and slapped to both sides. Behind him were Yan Feng and Duan Tianxing, two 8th level venerables. Their auras were extremely powerful. They were like ferocious beasts, pushing away all the heat waves. Behind the two of them were the elders of the major forces. These people also used all their means and quickly rushed forward. It's about time. Let's go. In the forest, the 7th elder and Zhu Qin moved out. They were like ghosts. Their speed was extremely fast. In an instant, they disappeared from their original positions. After the two left, Lin Xian and Zhao Shui also revealed themselves. Let's go too. Let's see what kind of peerless divine weapon is inside. Lin Xian looked forward. His eyes were extremely bright. He stomped his foot and shot forward like an arrow. When he was near the cave entrance, the red lotus armor on his body quickly covered his entire body. On the armor, a bright red lotus flower bloomed, pushing away all the heat waves that came with it. Zhao Shui followed closely behind. There were countless golden vortexes around him, absorbing the surrounding heat. The two of them were very fast. Soon they entered the cave. This cave was a completely different world. It was bigger than expected. The crimson ground was cracked into pieces. From time to time, flames would pass through these cracks. These flames were not to be underestimated. They could even easily tear apart a venerable's protective shield. No one doubted this. Not only was the ground fiery red, but the entire mountain walls were also fiery red. It was like a furnace of heaven and earth, emitting a torrential heat. As they walked forward, black iron chains appeared on the crimson walls. Each of them was as thick as a bucket. These iron chains intertwined with each other, as if they were binding something. Everyone looked ahead and sucked in a breath of cold air. This was because there was an extremely huge furnace in front of them. It was bound by countless black iron chains and suspended in midair. The furnace was very simple and unadorned. At first glance, one could tell that it was an ancient item. Moreover, its position was very strange. The mouth of the furnace was facing downward. Endless red lava flowed down from the mouth of the furnace like a fiery waterfall. This remote sky mystery realm had existed for at least a few thousand years. This cave must have existed all along. It was very strange that the flaming lava had not dried up after a few thousand years. Lin Xian was also very surprised. However, he quickly figured out what was going on. He realized that there were mysterious patterns on the huge furnace. They were emitting a strange power. Perhaps the reason why the flaming waterfall could last for thousands of years was related to the mysterious patterns on the furnace. However, this was not something he needed to consider. He shifted his gaze away from the huge furnace and looked at the ground in front of him. Then Lin Xian's body shook. Endless light burst out from his eyes. There was an open space in front of him. Countless swords were inserted into the ground. At a glance, there were at least 1,000 swords densely packed like stone tablets. These swords were of different sizes and shapes. Some were shining like the sun, emitting a blazing light from head to toe. There were also some that were rusty, like rusty iron swords that were casually inserted into the ground. Looking at this scene, Lin Xian was not the only one stunned. Everyone was stunned. They did not expect that there would be over 1,000 swords here. That's right. This should be a place to refine weapons. Moreover, the owner of this place should be a master swordsmith. Otherwise, why would all the treasure auras be from swords? We're rich. We're really rich this time. These are all ancient treasures. Their power is definitely beyond imagination. A group of people ran forward crazily. However, Lin Xian did not move. He felt that the situation was too strange. Moreover, his main target was the peerless weapon. Not only did Lin Xian not move, but the old man in linen clothes also did not move. However, the old man's eyes were like lightning as he quickly scanned the entire space. He seemed to be looking for traces of the peerless weapon. At this moment, many of the warriors who ran out previously pulled out their swords from the ground. A few of them managed to snatch the dazzling sword, and they immediately looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha, peerless weapon. I got a peerless weapon.
Chapter 1207. A sword chi that was like a crescent moon slashed down from the sky. The warrior holding the resplendent sword also snorted coldly, and quickly waved the sword in his hand. The long sword bloomed like the sun, emitting an incomparably resplendent light. However, when it collided with the crescent moon sword chi, it let out a cracking sound and broke into two. What? How is this possible? This is impossible. I obtained a peerless divine weapon. How could it be broken? The warrior held the broken sword with a disappointed expression. An elder of the deity Sword Villa snorted coldly. How foolish. Whether it is a divine weapon or not, it is not just determined by its light. How can it be so easy to find a peerless divine weapon? The deity Sword Villa could be said to be the most outstanding sect in the Tianmu continent, in terms of sword techniques. Therefore, the elder's words caused everyone to ponder. It seemed that the dazzling light was not necessarily a divine weapon. Instead, it was possible that the rusty sword was the true peerless treasure sword. For a time, many warriors specially chose those long swords that looked like scrap metal. Buzz! A warrior pulled out a rusty iron sword and waved it in the air. Under normal circumstances, these warriors wouldn't even look at it, because the sword was too ordinary. But now, with their previous experience, they specially chose this kind of iron sword. However, to everyone's disappointment, the rusty sword directly turned into fragments in the air and scattered all over the ground. Seeing this, even the people from the deity Sword Villa frowned. It seemed that the treasured swords here could not be distinguished by their appearance. It didn't mean that shiny things were bad, and rusty things weren't good either. In other words, any sword could be a peerless divine weapon. Thinking of this, the warriors planned to start a carpet search. If one time was not enough, they would search twice. He did not believe that when they pulled out all the swords, they would still not be able to find the peerless divine weapon. However, in the next moment, many warriors in front of them cried out in alarm. This was because they discovered that each person could only pull out one sword. And once the martial artists who had pulled out the sword wanted to pull out another sword, they would be repelled by an extremely strange force. Damn it, I don't believe it. Why can't I pull out the second sword? Some warriors did not believe it, and used their strength to pull out the second sword. However, a burst of sword chi shot out from the sword, directly splitting the martial artist into two halves. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Then, they let out a breath of cold air. Shocking, too shocking. They did not expect that the swords would have such a change. Although the one who died was only a 6th level venerable, this scene shocked everyone, because they would not forget that this was a cave left behind by an ancient expert, who knew what terrifying things would be inside. So for a time, everyone became extremely careful. They were deeply afraid that they would trigger some formation taboo and cause unnecessary danger. Instead, it was those people who had hurriedly pulled out their treasured swords that were filled with regret. Previously, they didn't think that each person could only choose once, so they didn't care when they made their choice. But now they did not have the chance to choose. It seems that everyone can only choose once. If we follow the rules, we shouldn't be in any danger. The people from deity Sword Villa observed for a while, and discovered the principle. Alright, all of you can go and choose your own treasured swords, the plain-clothed old man slowly said. Hearing this, the disciples of deity Sword Villa were overjoyed. They quickly walked forward and carefully chose. They were all swordsmen, so their pursuit of swords was much stronger than other warriors. Previously, they did not act rashly, so they avoided the previous incident. Now they could finally choose properly. However, when deity Sword Villa's Xiao Fan walked forward, something happened. Because before he started to choose, a sword on the ground began to tremble. Then it burst out with a dazzling light. In the end, the sword rose from the ground and flew toward Xiao Fan. Xiao Fan's heart skipped a beat. He stretched out his hand and quickly grabbed the sword. Then, the sword let out a sonorous sword cry as if it was very excited. What's going on? Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. This was because nothing like this had ever happened before. On the other hand, the elders of deity Sword Villa were excited. The sword chooses its owner. This is the sword choosing its owner. Rumor has it that some high-level swords have spirituality.
They can choose their own owners. I always thought it was a legend, but I didn't expect to see it today. Xiao Fan, look at that sword. Hearing the elder's words, Xiao Fan was also excited. Then, he channeled his spiritual energy into the sword in his hand. Suddenly, the sword Qi let out a sonorous cry. A fiery sword light swept across the entire void. Everywhere it passed, it seemed like a raging fire was burning. In the end, the red light that filled the sky dispersed, and the long sword revealed its true appearance. It was a fiery red sword. There were patterns on it that looked like a Buddhist imprint. It emitted a scorching aura. On the hilt of the sword, there were two ancient words: departing fire. Departing fire sword, a half-earth rank treasure. Moreover, it was a treasure forged by an ancient expert. Its power was unimaginable. After knowing this, the surrounding warriors were envious. That was a half-earth rank treasure. It was an extremely precious item. Only the genius disciples of the king families, or some elders, could own it. Ordinary warriors couldn't get it at all. Moreover, the departing fire sword wasn't an ordinary half-earth rank treasure. It was a treasure forged by an ancient expert. Its power was stronger than an ordinary earth rank treasure. A minute. Why don't I have such luck? As expected of the person called Junior Sword Honorable. He's really powerful. The group was envious. On the other hand, the elders of Deity Sword Villa laughed heartily. Even the Sword Honorable nodded his head slightly. It was indeed good to be able to make the sword choose its owner. At the side, Lin Xian was also surprised. He didn't expect the sword to have such spirituality. It could even choose its owner. He wondered what would happen if he went up. Would he attract the peerless divine sword? He was very curious, but he didn't act rashly. Firstly, he wanted to observe a little more. Secondly, the Sword Honorable and the other 8th level honorables didn't make a move. He wasn't in a hurry. Lin Xian wasn't in a hurry, but it didn't mean that the others weren't. Especially the young geniuses of the various forces. They all went down and were ready to show off their skills. Buzz! The Shen family's 13th young master went down and caused a commotion. Another sword chose its owner.
Chapter 1208. In fact, this was normal because he wasn't a pure swordsman. Xiao Fan was a disciple from the deity Sword Villa. His attainments in the way of the sword far surpassed other cultivators. Therefore, he could obtain a treasured sword like the departing flame sword. Although the genius disciples from the sovereign clans could also cause a commotion, they didn't obtain a peerless divine sword. Those ordinary disciples couldn't trigger the treasured swords to choose their masters. They could only rely on luck. Many people made their moves and obtained some treasures. At that moment, Yanfeng made his move. Yanfeng's move attracted everyone's attention. It couldn't be helped. He was an 8th heaven honorable. Everyone wanted to know what kind of divine weapon an expert of this level would obtain. For a moment, everyone's eyes were looking forward with great anticipation. Yanfeng's face was full of arrogance as he walked forward with majestic gait. Then he stood in the middle of the field with his hands behind his back. His body emitted a powerful aura. Obviously, Yanfeng didn't plan to carefully choose the treasured swords. Instead, he waited quietly. It seemed like he wanted the treasured swords to choose their masters. Indeed, in the next moment, the sound of swords clanging could be heard. But soon after, everyone was astonished. They realized that there wasn't only one sword clanging. 2 treasured swords exploded with dazzling light. They were like resplendent suns that shone in all directions. Then, the 2 treasured swords turned into streaks of light that flew toward Yanfeng. Seeing this scene, everyone was incomparably shocked. Even Xiao Fan was extremely shocked. He didn't expect Yanfeng to be so powerful that he could make 2 treasured swords recognize him as their master. Was this the strength of an 8th heaven honorable? He was too powerful. When Yanfeng saw this, the corners of his mouth curled up. He revealed a confident smile. Then he reached out and grabbed one of the treasured swords. The moment he grabbed it, the light of the other treasured sword quickly dimmed and returned to the ground. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Yanfeng didn't obtain both treasured swords. The people from the deity Sword Villa frowned. They knew the pros and cons of this. Ordinary cultivators would choose treasured swords from thousands of long swords. It was very likely that they would end up with trash. However, Yanfeng had to choose between 2 treasured swords. No matter which one he chose, it would definitely be a treasured sword. It wouldn't be an ordinary sword. As expected of an 8th level venerated realm cultivator, to actually receive such treatment. Seeing that Yanfeng had succeeded, everyone had different expressions. The 9th young master and 13th young master of the Shun clan had unfriendly expressions. This was because they realized that the sword in Yanfeng's hand was of a much higher grade than the ones in their hands. It even surpassed the Li fire sword in Xiao Fan's hand. In the distance, Lin Xian also nodded slightly. It seemed that even if one was not a swordsman, when one's strength reached a certain level, these treasured swords would automatically choose their masters. Just like Yanfeng now, the grade of the treasured sword in his opponent's hand had already surpassed the distant fire sword. Even amongst the half-earth step treasures, it was still extremely good. However, compared to his Lone Star sword, it was still slightly inferior. That was because his Lone Star sword contained a trace of an Earth rank artifact fragment. As long as it was related to an Earth step treasure, its power would be unimaginable. Even if it was just a fragment, it would still far surpass a half-Earth step treasure of the same price. Therefore, Lin Xian's target was not the ordinary half-Earth step artifacts in front of him, but the true peerless divine weapon. After Yanfeng succeeded, the Palace of Gods of War cheered. However, Duan Tianxing did not make a move. Instead, he looked towards the deity sword manor. Indeed, he was staring at the plain-clothed elder. It seemed that he was waiting for the other party to make a move. In fact, it was not only him. Everyone around was waiting because the plain-clothed elder was a legendary existence. He was a sword sovereign. These people wanted to know what kind of phenomenon would occur if the sword sovereign made a move. Would they find the true peerless divine weapon? Feeling everyone's gaze, the plain-clothed elder's face was calm. He then calmly walked forward. He's making a move. He's really making a move. Everyone was extremely excited because they would be able to witness the power of the legendary sword sovereign. Seeing the sword sovereign make a move, Yanfeng and Duan Tianxing also held their breaths. especially Duan Tianxing, whose eyes were blazing. Not only him, but the seventh elder and Zhu Chun of the Divine Bird Palace were also extremely nervous. They believed that as long as the Sword Sovereign made a move, he would definitely attract the peerless divine weapon. Then, it would be time for them to make a move. Of course, it would be better if the Sword Sovereign could not find the peerless divine weapon. In that case, no one would be able to find the true peerless divine weapon, and they would be able to complete the Heavenly Netherbird's mission without making a move. On the side, Lin Xian also narrowed his eyes. If there was someone who posed the greatest threat to him here, it would naturally be the plain-clothed elder. After all, the other party was once the famous Sword Sovereign. Although his vitality had withered, he was still not someone an ordinary Eighth Heaven supremacy could contend against. Moreover, the other party was an expert in the way of the sword. His attainments in the way of the sword were extraordinary. Perhaps he could really find the peerless divine weapon. Thinking of this, Lin Xian took a deep breath. If the situation changed, he had to make a move. Haha, Senior Sword Sovereign, you don't mind if I search with you, right? At this moment, Duan Tianxing of the Palace of Gods of War suddenly spoke. Then his godlike body quickly stepped forward and walked forward. In an instant, he arrived at the place where the sword was hidden. At this moment, the Sword Sovereign's voice slowly drifted over. As you wish. Clearly, he did not take this Duan Tianxing to heart. In that case, I want stand on ceremony. Then, Duan Tianxing stepped forward, and his aura suddenly erupted. Like a violent storm, it instantly filled the entire space. Its power was even stronger than Yin Feng's from before. Following his arrival, the long swords in front of him also began to hum non-stop. In fact, many of the long swords even exploded with resplendent light. 5 swords, a total of 5 swords shot into the sky and rapidly flew towards Duan Tianxing. Seeing this scene, everyone exclaimed, their eyes filled with astonishment. One had to know that previously, Yin Feng had only attracted 2 swords, and that had already made everyone envious. But now, this Duan Tianxing had directly attracted 5 swords. This was truly shocking. Lin Xian also narrowed his eyes and looked forward. Indeed, this Duan Tianxing was much stronger than Yin Feng. It was reasonable for him to attract 5 swords. Duan Tianxing stood with his hands behind his back. He had no intention of making a move. He allowed the 5 swords to turn into shocking rainbows and dance around him. His gaze was like a sharp sword as he looked behind him. There was an old figure there, but no one dared to underestimate him. The plain-clothed old man did not have any reaction to Duan Tianxing's ability to attract 5 swords. His old face remained calm. Then, he slowly arrived at the place where the sword was hidden. The moment he stepped on the ground, the surrounding swords suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Chapter 1209. The number was not something Duan Tianxing could compare to. The 10 swords turned into a long rainbow and danced around the old man, emitting a blazing light. This scene caused everyone to widen their eyes in shock. Even Duan Tianxing's pupils constricted, and his face was full of shock. His previous actions were naturally provocative. In his opinion, although the sword Venerable was famous, he had already declined and could no longer display the power he had in the past. That was why he wanted to provoke him. However, he did not expect that the sword Venerable would still be so powerful, even though his blood chi had withered. With just a step, he attracted 10 swords to surround him. There were twice as many swords as he was. This made him extremely shocked. One had to know that he had used all his strength to attract 1 sword, but the sword Venerable had attracted 10 swords just by walking casually. The gap between them could be said to be abnormally huge. The 10 swords circled around the sword Venerable like flowing light. The sword Venerable only glanced at them casually, was extremely angry, then shook his head. He also knew that he was no match for the sword he waved his hand. However, in a majestic force surged out, the divine weapon pushing the 10 swords around him away. Sword Villa. Buzz!
so he could only fight for it with all his might.
The 10 swords flew out,
the sword sovereign did not stop Duan Tianxing.
He pushed them away
because the other party did not attack directly. Everyone was extremely shocked.
He used his aura to attract the sword light.
If it were any other cultivator,
any rules,
they would definitely choose carefully.
The sword sovereign could not be bothered
the sword
with
venerable
him
had
because he was
pushed them away.
that no one here
and
was
did
a
not
match
choose
for
a
him
single
in
one.
terms of sword
It had to be
principle.
said that he was
They were
too
not
bold
even qualified
in this
for him
world
to take them
Only
seriously.
the sword venerable
in
could
front
do
of
that.
them.
At the
sword
side,
light became
Duan
brighter and
Tianxing's
brighter,
face darkened,
as if it was
he
going to
originally
break through
wanted
the
to
sky.
provoke the sword venerable,
sovereign's eyes
but
were
he did
also
not
extremely
expect the
bright,
sword venerable
as if
to
he wanted to
suppress him
see if the
in
sword
terms
was
of
a
numbers.
peerless divine
However,
weapon.
the sword
In the
venerable's
distance,
actions directly
Lin
provoked
Xian
him.
looked at this scene
The
with
10
a grave
swords
expression.
glanced at each other,
Although he
and
was
were
not
pushed
sure
away.
if the sword
This
light
made
was
him
from a
extremely
peerless
shocked
divine
and
weapon.
infuriated
He
at the
knew
same
that he
time.
could not wait any
Then,
longer.
he snorted
Therefore,
coldly
in the
and
next
pushed
moment,
away the
Lin
five
Xian
swords
made a
around
move.
him.
His
Seeing
figure
this
was like
action,
a phantom as
the
he
surrounding
shuttled through the
people
crowd
also exclaimed,
and arrived at the
However,
place
Lin
where the
Xian
sword
shook
was
his head
hidden in an
slightly.
instant.
With Duan
When he stepped onto
Tianxing's
the
strength
ground,
and attainments
he
in the
immediately
sword Dao,
activated the great
wanting
dragon
to compete
sword
with
soul.
the sword venerable.
A deep dragon
was
roar
undoubtedly
sounded
like
from
throwing
within
an
his
egg
body,
against a rock.
and then an
The sword
unforgettable
venerable
scene
was
appeared.
even more
On the ground in
expressionless.
front of him.
He did not even
Thousands
look at
of swords
Duan
were all
Tianxing.
trembling,
Once again,
as if they
he
were going
walked
to
past
soar
the
into the
countless
sky.
swords.
Beams
Then,
of dazzling
countless
sword light
swords soared
soared
into
out
the sky and
connected
flew
towards
towards
him like rainbows,
illuminating the
this
entire
time,
sky.
There were even
Clang,
more, a total
clang,
of 20
clang.
of them.
However,
Thousands of swords
the
flew
sword
out
venerable
and floated
only
in the
glanced
sky,
at it before
blooming
shaking
with
his head
dazzling light
and pushing it
then,
away again.
These swords
Next,
turned into
30
shocking
swords
rainbows
soared into the sky
and all
and were
flew
pushed
towards
away
Lin
again.
Xian.
For a moment,
Tianxing originally
Lin
wanted to
Xian
compete
was like a
with
sword immortal,
sovereign,
but when he
attracting
saw
thousands
this
of
scene,
swords
he
around
was
him.
immediately
What?
stunned.
Thousands
This
of
kind of
swords?
method was
How
simply
is
not
this
something that
possible?
he could use.
Dream.
In
I must
front
be
of them,
dreaming.
as the sword sovereign's
aura
aura
grew
grew
stronger.
stronger,
Who is this kid?
the number
How
of
can he be
treasured
so
swords in the
powerful?
sky also increased.
Everyone was stunned.
All of a
They
sudden,
looked at the scene
a
in
sword
front of
emitted
them,
a shocking light,
as if they had seen
that
a ghost.
light was very special.
They could not believe it.
It suppressed the
There
other
were more
sword
than 1,000
lights,
swords
and
in front
even
of
emitted
them,
an unusually
and most
sharp
of them
aura.
had soared into the
Seeing
sky
the sword light,
and were circling
everyone
around Lin
looked over
Xian.
with rapt
There
attention.
were only a few
They were
swords
very
left on the
excited.
ground.
Could it
Be
be
that
that
a
said that
peerless
Lin
divine
Xian's
weapon has
appearance had
appeared?
attracted
It
almost
seems
all
very
of the
likely.
swords?
As
This was
expected
simply
of the
too
honorable
shocking.
sword.
One must
I'm
know
afraid
that
only
even
he
a
has
sword
the
venerable
means to
would
make
not
the
be able
peerless
to
divine
create
weapon
such a
appear.
scene. Even
Everyone
Zhao
was
Shui,
shocked.
Morong
On the other
Qiansheng,
hand,
and the others
people from
widened their
deity
eyes
sword
in
Dilla were
disbelief.
ecstatic.
The others'
Duan
expressions were
Tianxing's
even
face was
more
gloomy.
exaggerated.
He looked
The
ahead
people
and
from the
roared,
deity sword
unleashing
manner
an
exclaimed,
unparalleled power.
while the people
His
from the
power
Aries
swept
workshop
towards the shocking
and the
sword
Shen
light,
family looked horribly
trying to
gloomy,
snatch it from the sword
especially
sovereign.
Yin Feng and
However,
Duan Tianxing.
when his power was
The
swept into the
asterisk
sword
minute.
light,
How
it
can
was
this
as
guy
if it had
attract
fallen
thousands
into
of
the
swords?
sea. There was
Yin
no
Feng
one
gritted
at all.
his teeth.
He was very unwilling to admit defeat when he lost to Lin Xian last time. This time, he had a breakthrough in his cultivation and thought that he could definitely kill Lin Xian. However, he had lost to Lin Xian before they even fought. He had only attracted 2 swords before, but Lin Xian had attracted thousands of swords. The gap between them was like the gap between heaven and earth. It was impossible to cross. Even the sword honorable could not remain calm. He looked at Lin Xian with astonishment in his eyes. Chapter 12:10. The longswords here were very magical. It didn't mean that one could attract many swords just because they were powerful. This required fate and attainments in the sword Tao. It could be said that it was extremely mysterious. Even if a king came, it would be impossible to attract all the swords away. That was because it was simply impossible. Who is this young man? How is he so powerful? The sword venerable stared at Lin Xian carefully with a face full of doubt. He had heard of the few genius disciples of the king clans, but Lin Xian was completely different from the information he knew. In other words, he wasn't from the king clans. That made him even more surprised. Apart from the king clans, what other forces' disciples could be so shocking? No, even the king clans can't find such a person. Unique treasure. This kid must have a unique treasure in his hands to be able to cause such a phenomenon. The sword venerable's eyes flickered as he stared at Lin Xian. He couldn't help it. The scene was too shocking. He really didn't believe that a young man at the 7th level of the supremacy realm could cause such a phenomenon. Perhaps the only explanation was that he had a treasure on him. In fact, his guess was close. However, it wasn't a treasure, but a sword soul. The reason for such a shocking scene was the great dragon sword soul in Lin Xian's body. The great dragon sword soul was an offensive saint technique of heaven and earth. It was extremely powerful, and its aura could naturally attract countless swords here. Therefore, although Lin Xian was only at the 7th level of the supremacy realm, the commotion he caused was even more terrifying than the sword venerable. Looking at the thousands of longswords around him, Lin Xian's eyes flickered. Then he stretched out his hands and pressed down on the void. Immediately, a majestic force surged out and pushed the thousands of swords away. Then, the longswords stabbed back into the ground like rain. Bang! 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 The void rumbled, and the ground trembled. Countless longswords kept clanging. What? He pushed them all away. He didn't take any of them. Everyone was dumbfounded. They didn't expect Lin Xian to do that. He was really bold. There were definitely powerful treasures among the thousands of longswords. However, Lin Xian didn't choose any of them and directly pushed them away. This boldness was even stronger than the sword venerable. Duan Tianxing's face darkened at this sight. Damn it! This brat's target is also a peerless divine weapon. Stop him, don't let him come up. Brat scram! As soon as Duan Tianxing left, Duan Tianlang from the Palace of Gods of War grinned maliciously and rushed towards Lin Xian. His current cultivation had already reached the peak of the 7th heaven of the venerable realm. It could be said that his strength had increased greatly. In the next moment, a terrifying fist smashed towards Lin Xian's head. Die brat! A demon wolf flew out from the fist. The void trembled and was mercilessly torn apart. The demon wolf turned into a beam of light and quickly pounced towards Lin Xian. He's going all out right from the start. It seems like Duan Tianlang wants to kill his opponent. That's for sure. Duan Tianlang suffered a loss at the hands of Lin Xian before. Now that his strength has increased greatly, he naturally wants to take revenge. I'm afraid that Lin Xian is in danger. Yeah, he was able to create such a vision previously. It shouldn't be because of his own strength. I wonder if he can withstand this punch. The crowd discussed fervently. Many of them looked worried. In the face of such a terrifying attack, Lin Xian snorted coldly and struck out with his palm. Spiritual energy rolled and countless flames jumped. They turned into a huge flaming hand and slapped forward. Boom! The demon wolf fist shadow was smashed apart. Not only that, Duan Tianlang was also sent flying. He vomited blood and crashed into the wall behind him. What? He was sent flying? The crowd widened their eyes in disbelief. That was a peak 7th heaven venerable. He was sent flying with a single slap. Lin Xian's strength was too terrifying. How is this possible? Damn it, how did he do it? The people from the Palace of Gods of War were horrified. Yin Feng's face darkened. His eyes were like lightning as he stared at Lin Xian. Then he sneered coldly. 7th heaven venerable. You've broken through. No wonder you're stronger than before. So what if you've broken through? You can only lie down in front of me. Yin Feng's voice was cold. Then, he took a step forward, and his body emitted powerful spiritual energy. The aura of an 8th heaven venerable.
Oh my god, is Yen Feng going to attack? It's possible. According to the rumors, Yen Feng was defeated by Lin Xian before. I guess he wants to take revenge now. What? Yen Feng was defeated before? Are you kidding? He's a genius martial artist from the Palace of Gods of War. The crowd was shocked. They didn't expect there to be such a secret. Lin Xian is too terrifying. He can even defeat a genius martial artist like Yen Feng. So what? He was just lucky. Senior brother Yen Feng has broken through to the 8th heaven venerable. He's a peerless expert. No matter how strong that kid is, he can't beat our senior brother Yen Feng. He's dead. An 8th heaven venerable can crush a 7th heaven venerable. Senior brother Yen Feng can kill him with a finger. The disciples of the Palace of Gods of War sneered when they saw Yen Feng attack. In the distance, Duan Tianqing also heaved a sigh of relief. Then he focused on finding a peerless weapon. Lin Xian said coldly, "You're not my match. Kid, you're too arrogant." Yen Feng sneered. "Although I was defeated by you before, it's different now. I've broken through to the 8th heaven venerable. Killing you is as easy as flipping my hand." However, Lin Xian shook his head. An 8th heaven venerable isn't invincible. You've just entered the 8th heaven. I said you're not my match. So, get lost if you don't want to die. You're the first person who dares to talk to me like that. I'll knock your teeth out one by one later. Let's see how stubborn you can be then. Yen Feng gripped the sword he had just obtained and slashed out. The sword light flashed and turned into countless light waves. It was as if endless waves were rushing through the void. This sword was too terrifying. It was enough to kill any 7th heaven venerable. When the surrounding people saw Yen Feng attack, they all retreated, afraid that they would be swept away by the waves. Is this the strength of an 8th heaven venerable? Just the aura alone makes me feel despair. There's nothing I can do. The gap is too big. The gap between the venerable realm and the 7th heaven was like heaven and earth. It was impossible to fight someone of a higher level. For a moment, no one was optimistic about Lin Xian. They thought that he was dead for sure this time. The terrifying sword light was incomparably vast, but it was useless against Lin Xian. A vermilion bird seal was quickly shot out from Lin Xian's hand. The fire element here was very rich, so Lin Xian used fire concept in these few moves. A flaming vermilion bird was born and shattered all the sword light. Chapter 12:11. I've said it before. You're no match for me. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Lin Xian said coldly. Then he stomped his foot and charged out like a bolt of lightning. What? He blocked it. Lin Xian could actually block the attack of an eighth heaven supremacy? That was unbelievable. Everyone was dumbfounded. Although they knew that Lin Xian was powerful and mysterious, they didn't think that Lin Xian could fight against an eighth heaven supremacy. But now he had done it. It was really shocking. Yan Feng's face turned pale. He didn't expect Lin Xian to be able to fight against him. There was a ball of anger burning in his heart. You're courting death. How dare an ant compete with the sun and moon? I'll let you know the true power of an eighth heaven supremacy. Yan Feng put away the sword in his hand and pulled out the demon slayer at his waist. With a clang, the demon slayer was pulled out. The long saber shone brightly, and the light was like the sea. The resplendent saber light shot into the sky and lit up the entire space. Buzz! Yan Feng held the frenzied saber and slashed out. Suddenly, the saber light emitted a buzzing sound that made one's soul tremble. The ocean blue saber light was like a wave that instantly streaked across the sky and slashed toward Lin Xian. The entire cave was shaking. 8 Ocean Abyss Saber. Yan Feng's voice was cold like the edge of a saber. His head emitted a sharp aura. The 8 Ocean Abyss Saber was an Earth-class martial art. It was very terrifying. Now that Yan Feng's cultivation had increased greatly and reached the 8th heaven supremacy, he could be said to be extremely powerful. At that moment he was one with the saber. The terrifying saber light seemed to be able to shatter everything as it slashed toward Lin Xian. Lin Xian stood in the field and waved his hand. Immediately, the thousands of swords around him trembled and emitted a resplendent light, forming a sea of sword light. These sword lights combined to form a huge sword chi that floated in the sky. Then it slashed forward violently. Boom! The two collided with a deafening sound. It was as if thunder had exploded from the 9 heavens. The entire cave kept shaking. At this moment, mysterious red runes appeared on the ground and walls, emitting a mysterious power that protected the entire cave. Otherwise, just this move alone would have flattened the entire cave. However, those martial artists were not so lucky. That terrifying remnant energy directly impacted their bodies, sending them flying. Those with weaker strength even vomited large mouthfuls of blood, suffering serious injuries. Retreat! Countless people screamed in horror and retreated to the wall. The older generation figures and 7th-level venerables quickly worked together to form a screen of light to defend themselves. Otherwise, many of them would probably die here in the next attack. Now they were no longer shocked but terrified, especially the warriors from the Palace of Ares. Their expressions were as if they had seen a ghost. Impossible! How is this possible? How can he contend against an 8th-level venerable? Dream, damn it, I must be dreaming. They had really gone mad. It should be known that that was an 8th heaven venerable. In the eyes of the world, he was already a peerless expert. Moreover, there was a huge gap between a 7th-level venerable realm and an 8th-level venerable realm. It could be said that there was no suspense in this battle. But now, the result was completely out of their expectations. Lin Xian blocked Yan Feng's attack. Not only that, but it seemed that they were evenly matched. Yan Feng's expression was even more terrifying. If the first attack could be said to be blocked by luck, then the previous scene was definitely not luck. He could now confirm that Lin Xian definitely had the battle prowess of an 8th heaven venerable. Damn it, how did this brat do it? Yan Feng's expression was very ugly. I don't believe it. This brat must have used some secret technique to forcefully increase his battle prowess. Yes, that must be it. Otherwise, how could he possibly contend against me? Yan Feng seemed to have grasped something. Then he revealed a cold smile. Brat, I didn't expect you to have such a secret technique. But it's a pity. I think this secret technique won't last for too long. Since that's the case, I'll play with you. When the secret technique ends, I'll let you know how powerful I am. Yan Feng's words calmed the hearts of the disciples of the Palace of Ares. So it was a secret technique. No wonder he could contend against an 8th-level venerable. What a crooked method. The secret technique can increase one's battle prowess temporarily, but the side effects are definitely huge. Furthermore, This secret technique definitely won't last for too long. Just wait. Once the secret technique ends, I'll be dead for sure. Facing these words, Lin Xian only said 2 words, ignorant. He did indeed have a secret technique that could increase his battle prowess. However, he didn't use any secret technique at all. This was his true battle prowess. However, he didn't have time to waste here with Yan Feng. His goal was the peerless divine weapon. With a cold snort, Lin Xian attacked again. Haha brat, I guessed it right. You can't wait to attack, right? Seeing Lin Xian's actions seemed to confirm his guess, Yan Feng laughed maniacally. A guy who used a secret technique to increase his strength wants to compete with me? What a joke! Yan Feng laughed maniacally as he waved the berserk blade in his hand. Rays of blade light surged out rapidly. Then an unparalleled power erupted from Yan Feng's body. His eyes were like 2 rays of blade light, piercing through space and time. At this moment, he seemed to have merged with the berserk blade in his hand, erupting with powerful battle prowess. Lin Xian pulled out the Lone Star Sword. An endless sword light rushed out from his body. At the same time, he used the illusory demon steps, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the sky. He instantly arrived in front of Yan Feng. The Lone Star Sword in his hand slashed down fiercely. Dang! The two collided, and a deafening sound rang out. A huge crack appeared in the void. Lin Xian's black hair fluttered in the wind. The great dragon sword soul continued to circulate, causing his battle prowess to be unparalleled. He fought against Yan Feng, an 8th level venerable. The surrounding people were deeply shocked by this scene. A 7th level venerable fought an 8th level venerable head-on. This was probably the first time in history that a 7th level venerable was not at a disadvantage. Impossible. Go to hell. Yan Feng roared into the sky, wanting to kill Lin Xian. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. The long blade in his hand slashed towards Lin Xian. Every strike caused the void to collapse. On the other hand, Lin Xian was like the tip of a sword, sharp to the extreme. The long sword slashed across the sky, and an unparalleled light burst out, causing the entire world to lose its color. The sword chi swept out, shattering all of Yan Feng's attacks. The sword chi was like a dragon roaring in the sky, as if it wanted to tear the world apart. It was extremely terrifying. Yan Feng's pupils shrank, and his expression changed drastically. He did not dare to fight against this terrifying sword chi. His body retreated rapidly like a ghost. However, his momentum was at a disadvantage when he retreated. When he wanted to counterattack, he realized that he was being suppressed by Lin Xian.
Chapter 12:12. Lin Xian did not give Yin Feng a chance to counterattack. The Lone Star sword in his hand was like a dragon, roaring continuously. A terrifying killing intent swept out in all directions. Lin Xian slashed out 13 times in a row. The terrifying sword light connected in the sky like a vast ocean, and all of them blasted towards Yin Feng. The entire void was trembling, and the cave was shaking nonstop as if it would collapse at any time. Yin Feng's face was pale. He could not dodge at all, and could only take the 13 swords head-on. The sound of metal clashing resounded in the air. Yin Feng's face was pale, and his entire arm was trembling. The 13 swords were like raging waves, each stronger than the last. In the end, although he took the 13 swords, his arm was completely numb, and he could not exert any strength at all. On the other hand, Lin Xian's battle intent was high, and his aura was majestic. Sword light surrounded his body, and his killing intent was monstrous. He slashed out again. Wind and thunder roared and metal and fire mixed together. This sword was extremely sharp, and it directly sent Yin Feng's demon slayer flying. Then, the long sword swept out like a dragon swinging its tail, and sent Yin Feng flying. Blood splattered in the air, and explosions continued. Everyone was stunned. The scene in front of them was shocking. They could not believe that Yin Feng had been defeated. One had to know that Yin Feng was an 8th heaven honorable. He was a peerless expert in the eyes of the world, but he had been defeated just like that. Furthermore, he had lost to a 7th level venerate. This was simply too unbelievable. Duan Tianxing's face was also gloomy, and his entire body was trembling. He did not expect Lin Xian to be able to defeat Yin Feng. It was really beyond his expectations. Not only that, but an inexplicable fear rose in his heart. Lin Xian was someone that the Palace of Gods of War had to kill. One of his missions in the remote sky secret realm this time was to kill Lin Xian. Originally, there was no suspense to this mission because Lin Xian was only a cultivator at the 5th heavenly layer, before entering the remote heaven secret realm. A person like that was only an ant in Duan Tianxing's eyes. However, in just 2 to 3 months, Lin Xian had already become a 7th heaven honorable. Not only that, but his battle strength was even more powerful. He could already fight an 8th heaven honorable. It would be very difficult to kill him now. Thinking of this, he felt fear and regret at the same time. If he had made up his mind to pursue them with all his might back then, none of this would have happened. But now it was too late. Not only in the remote sky secret realm, but if they let him out, the Palace of Gods of War would probably undergo an earth-shaking change. Therefore, the best opportunity to kill Lin Xian was in the remote heaven mystery realm. Just as he was considering whether or not to make a move, Lin Xian had already made the first move. After dealing with Yin Feng, Lin Xian turned around and went back to the sword treasury. He activated the great dragon sword spirit, and thousands of swords began to hum. His eyes flickered as he scanned the surroundings. He wanted to find the true peerless divine weapon. For a moment, the entire space was filled with sword radiance. Sword chi soared into the sky, and was extremely dazzling. The sword sovereign also snorted coldly as his eyes shone brightly. A huge sword aura surged from his body, connecting the heavens and the earth. Rays of sword light spread out in all directions like waves, quickly covering the entire sword treasury. Duan Tianxing also roared as he activated the energy in his body with all his might. 3 violent bursts of energy covered the entire space, leaving nothing behind. Finally, under the combined efforts of the 3 great powerhouses, an extremely dazzling ray of light shone from the sky sword forest. The peerless divine weapon has appeared. Seeing that ray of light, everyone exclaimed. In the next moment, the ray of light turned into a bolt of lightning and charged towards the sword sovereign. Damn it! Seeing this, Duan Tianxing roared angrily. He stretched out a huge palm of light and grabbed at the space before him. Lin Xian, on the other hand, shook his head slightly. This place was very strange. Since the hidden sword had chosen the sword lord, it was already destined. As expected, although Duan Tianxing's palm of light was terrifying, it was instantly torn apart by that ray of sword light. Soon, that ray of sword light arrived beside the sword sovereign. Seeing this, Duan Tianxing roared at the sky
his eyes filled with despair. Lin Xian was expressionless. This was what he had expected. However, this time, things went beyond his expectations. This was because two figures had suddenly appeared behind him and were charging towards the sword Venerable at lightning speed. Then, two terrifying palms reached out and grabbed the treasured sword in front of the sword sovereign. It's them! Lin Xian looked at the two figures with a surprised expression. He naturally knew these two figures, but he did not expect them to dare to attack it this time. One must know, that was the sword sovereign. The two figures were naturally the seventh elder and Zhu Chun of the Divine Bird Palace. The two of them had been ordered by the heavenly Netherbird to obtain the peerless divine weapon. However, they did not recognize the peerless divine weapon at all, and the heavenly Netherbird did not tell them. Therefore, in their opinion, the sword in the sword sovereign's hand must be a peerless divine weapon. Therefore they attacked. When these two people appeared, everyone was stunned. They did not expect that someone would dare to attack the sword sovereign. They were really bold. However, when they sensed the aura of these two people, they all screamed, Eighth Heaven Venerable! Eighth Heaven Venerables! Other than Duan Tianxing and Yan Feng of the Palace of Gods of War, there were two Eighth Heaven Venerables. This was too shocking. However, what shocked them even more was that the two figures were actually from the Divine Bird Palace. How is this possible? Since when did the Divine Bird Palace have Eighth Heaven Venerables? Everyone was stunned. The sword sovereign snorted coldly. He waved his sleeve, and the long sword in front of him suddenly bloomed with a blazing light. Then a sword light quickly slashed forward. The seventh elder and Zhu Chun of the Divine Bird Palace were hit by the sword light. They immediately retreated, and the void cracked. However, balls of black flames strangely rose from their bodies, forming a defense that blocked the sword light. Therefore, they were not fatally injured. The two of them landed on the ground and stared straight ahead. You two stupid birds dare to come and snatch my things, the sword sovereign said with disdain. The seventh elder gritted his teeth and looked very serious. No matter what, we will not let you take the peerless divine weapon away today. Behind them, Duan Tianxing saw this scene and was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed wildly. Good, good, good. Fellow Taoists of the Divine Bird Palace, why don't we join forces? He could not fight against the sword sovereign, and it seemed that the two of them could not succeed either. Therefore, he thought of joining forces. 3 Eighth Heaven Venerables should be able to fight against the sword sovereign.
Chapter 12-13. All right. The 7 elders quickly nodded at Duan Tianxing's suggestion. As long as they could stop the sword venerable and get the peerless weapon, it didn't matter who they joined forces with. Be careful, that kid is very strange. Duan Tianxing came to the 7th elder's side and glanced in Lin Xian's direction. However, Lin Xian merely shrugged his shoulders and left the sword vault. The sword still belonged to the sword venerable, so he wouldn't make a move. Thus he left the battle. The sword venerable was expressionless when he saw Lin Xian leave. But Duan Tianxing and the rest secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Lin Xian's strength wasn't inferior to theirs. If they really wanted to fight, there would be a lot of trouble. Now that he had left, it couldn't be better for them. In the next moment, the 3 of them formed a triangle and rushed toward the sword venerable. It seems that I haven't fought for a long time, and the world has forgotten about this old man. The sword venerable said slowly. All right, I'll show you what a peerless weapon is today. With that, the sword venerable's aura became stronger and stronger. The light in his eyes was like a peerless sword that tore through the void. With a clang, it was as if a sword had been unsheathed, and the entire sky trembled. With a slash of the sword, a terrifying sword chi flew forward like a thunderbolt. As soon as the sword chi appeared, the surrounding cultivators all fell to the ground, their faces pale and their bodies trembling. With their strength, they couldn't resist the sword chi from the sword venerable. Duan Tianxing and the other 2 were the first to bear the brunt. Their expressions changed as they sensed danger. I, the unique and righteous, Duan Tianxing roared, and his body glowed brightly, forming a very thick defense that enveloped him. Beside him, the 7th elder and Zhu Qin didn't dare to be careless. They quickly circulated their spirit energy and formed a huge 3-headed vermilion blood bird that covered their bodies. In the face of this terrifying sword, they had no choice but to use their strongest defense. The terrifying sword chi fell from the sky like the Milky Way, shattering the void wherever it passed. In the next moment, it slashed at Duan Tianxing and the other 2, sending them flying. The green light on Duan Tianxing's body and the shadow of the divine bird on 7th elder's body rapidly cracked under the attack of the sword aura. The 3 of them felt their chi and blood churning. Many parts of their bodies were cut open by the sword chi. However, the 3 of them were 8th heaven venerables after all. Furthermore, the 3 of them were very powerful when they joined forces. In the end, they successfully resisted the sword. However, they weren't happy at all, because the single sword venerable had only moved his finger. He hadn't even taken out his weapon, yet he had already created such a power. This was not good news for them. Lin Xian looked at this scene with a dignified expression. As expected of a sword venerable, he was indeed terrifying. Although he didn't have much time left, he could still display such a terrifying combat strength. It was really shocking. However, Lin Xian's attention was quickly diverted. Under the perception of the dragon sword soul, Lin Xian seemed to find that something was summoning him. His gaze shifted from the battlefield in front of him to the gigantic heaven and earth smelt in the sky. That feeling seemed to be coming from the huge furnace. The huge furnace was extremely magical. Countless lava waterfalls fell from the entrance, forming a magnificent scene. The temperature was extremely terrifying. Even 7th heaven venerables didn't dare to go near it. If he guessed correctly, this should be the fire used by the peerless figures in the past to refine weapons. A fire that could refine a peerless divine weapon was definitely extraordinary. Kid, what are you looking at? The dark red divine dragon asked from the side. I feel that there's something in the furnace. Something? Hearing this, the dark red divine dragon became excited. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and get it. That fire isn't easy to deal with. Lin Xian expressed his worries. What's the problem? Don't you have the 1,000 beast cauldron? Just absorb all the fire. Oh right, this fire is good stuff. It'll be very helpful for you to refine weapons. Use the 1,000 beast cauldron? Lin Xian's mouth twitched slightly. To be honest, he would have to pay a huge price to use that thing. However, in the end he sighed. Alright. Because he really had no other choice now. Therefore, he quickly communicated with Zero. However, to his surprise, Zero didn't make any other request this time. Lin Xian heaved a sigh of relief
because the price of using the Thousand Beast Cauldron was too great. If he could avoid it, he wouldn't use it. However, he didn't expect that there would be an exception this time. Soon, Lin Xian seemed to have figured it out. The fire in the furnace that day was probably also beneficial to the Thousand Beast Cauldron. Since he had the support of the Thousand Beast Cauldron, Lin Xian didn't delay any longer and quickly soared into the sky. His actions immediately attracted everyone's attention. What's Lin Xian doing? Why is he flying into the sky? Does he want to interfere too? That shouldn't be. That's not the direction of the battlefield. It looks like he's flying towards the huge furnace in the sky. No way. What's there to investigate about that furnace? Moreover, I'm afraid that even Seventh Heaven Venerables wouldn't dare to go near that temperature. The group of people discussed animatedly, unable to understand. They didn't even think that it was a peerless divine weapon, because they had already determined that the sword in front of the Sword Reverend was a peerless divine weapon. Therefore, they didn't think that there was anything in the earth furnace that could surpass a peerless divine weapon. Not only were the surrounding cultivators puzzled, but even Duan Tianxing and the other two were very surprised. However, they were still paying special attention to Lin Xian's actions. Damn it, what's that brat up to now? The seventh elder quickly sent a voice transmission while dodging the sword chi from the Sword Reverend. Who knows? Ignore him. I've already investigated that heaven and earth furnace. Even Eighth Heaven Venerables wouldn't dare to go in. No matter how strong that brat is, he can't possibly avoid those flames. Hearing this, the seventh elder and Zhu Chen relaxed. Therefore, the three of them joined forces and quickly attacked the Sword Reverend. Under normal circumstances, the three of them wouldn't be able to defeat the Sword Reverend even if they joined forces. However, the black flames on the seventh elder and Zhu Chen's bodies were very strange. They actually resisted the sword chi from the Sword Reverend. Therefore, the current stalemate was created. The Sword Reverend's face was also gloomy. He originally didn't care about the three Eighth Heaven Venerables, but the black flames on their bodies were too strange. He had to be careful. These black flames seemed to have the aura of the heavenly Netherbird. When did these two from the Divine Bird Palace have a connection with the heavenly Netherbird? The Sword Reverend's eyes flashed. He was very confused. The strength of the heavenly Netherbird was obvious to all. Even if the Sword Reverend was at his peak, he might not be able to contend against it, let alone now. However, the two people in front of him clearly had the flames that only the heavenly Netherbird possessed. He had to be careful.
Chapter 12:14. No one stopped him. This was undoubtedly good news for Lin Xian. He was very fast, and arrived near the furnace in an instant. Then he flipped his palm, and the thousand-beast cauldron appeared in the void. With a low shout, Lin Xian injected his spirit power into the thousand-beast cauldron. Then the small black cauldron released a black glow. The birds and beasts on it swam continuously, as if they were about to come to life. A powerful devouring force surged out, and surged towards the flame furnace. Boom! Suddenly the void trembled. Countless flames surged and spread in the sky. They seemed to be attracted by something, and gathered towards the thousand-beast cauldron. What? He wants to absorb those flames? Is he crazy? No way. Even an eighth heaven supremacy would avoid those flames. And Zhu Chen's face no matter how strong that kid is, they had been busy for half a day, resist those flames, risking their lives. Everyone to fight was the shocked and puzzled. In the However, end, they realized that the sword in their opponent's hand, this kid is really digging his own grave. Divine weapon. I was still thinking of how to deal with him, but now he's courting death. To vomit blood. That's even better. However, it wasn't too late now. To death by those Since flames. The peerless divine weapon had appeared. They had to obtain it. No one could understand Lin Xian's actions. They complete the mission given to them. That he was playing with fire. Netherbird. However, the two of them let out a long dragon as they rose from the ground, and more quickly flew very calm because they knew Lin Xian's methods. They had to snatch the green treasured sword before Lin Xian did. The terrifying flames in the sky did not burn just as they approached the green sword. Instead, their faces changed into the thousand-beast cauldron in his hand. Because the green sword felt threatened, was left. It immediately began to hum. Furnace in the sky, a dark green light gradually decreased, as if it wanted to split the world in half. Inside. The sword was too fragments in the furnace. The sky couldn't withstand it. All scrap metal. The terrifying aura caused everyone to tremble. However, amidst the debris, they realized that this aura was exactly the same as the one they had when he saw that green glow. He could sense that the aura that he had sensed previously was emitted by that green glow. The seventh elder, it's not enough. Chen's hearts beat wildly as they looked at the sword. Continued to push the thousand-beast cauldron to absorb the flames inside. Fortunately, the green glow in front became brighter and brighter behind black flames to protect even the ordinary cultivators. They would have been in danger. Oh my God! However, what is that? What made them feel at ease was that after the treasure in that furnace, sword unleashed a shocking attack. How did that once again regained its calm? The group of people was extremely silent. Duan Tianxing, the seventh elder, had gloomy expressions. Didn't delay any longer. They hadn't expected Lin Xian to be able to absorb the flames. Duan Tianxing also roared and charged over. Was that there were other treasures within the flames. He raised his hand, although he still didn't know what the treasure was. Toward Duan Tianxing. It must be something extraordinary to be able to exist in such a huge furnace. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Below, everyone could finally see what the green light was. He looked at the sky. It was a long sword, and then took a deep breath. Its entire body was green, to the deity sword like an emerald, sparkling and translucent. Shocked everyone. The green long sword stood among the thousands of pieces of scrap metal. Even the deity sword Villa's it was like a star shining brightly. They asked in unison, a peerless divine weapon. Elder sword venerable. When Lin Xian saw the dark green sword, fight for that peerless divine sword, suddenly appeared in his mind. Yes, with elder strength, because he definitely get an unusually sharp aura from it. However, sword as the flames dwindled and the green light grew brighter. Fate has already decided. Lin Xian became more and more certain. The rules here are very firm. Sword was not a peerless divine weapon. It might cause a hopeless disaster. In front of him could very well be the true peerless godly disciples fell silent. Even the sword sovereign had noticed venerable very well. Suddenly, he was an extremely ancient existence. He had already obtained a treasured sword. He must have his reasons. According to the rules of this place. Don't worry. He couldn't lay his hands on other treasured swords. It's a double-edged sword. Even if the green sword was a peerless divine weapon, but it will also bring us endless trouble. Obtain it. Duan Tianxing and the others were even more shocked. I feel that they gave up on attacking the sword sovereign. According to my estimation, there should be an earth rank fragment in it. A peerless divine weapon. What? That's the true peerless divine weapon. Duan Tianxing roared excitedly. Chapter 12:15. Since the Sword Venerable had spoken, the deity Sword Villa did not participate in the fight for the divine weapon. Hence, they retreated to the side and watched quietly. Although the other people around also had the same idea, they were not strong enough to fight against the flames in the sky. Hence, no one dared to act rashly. In an instant, only Lin Xian and the other three were left in the sky. Kid, I have to say that you're really lucky to have found an exceptional divine weapon. But your luck has come to an end, because you can't get this exceptional divine weapon. It's destined to be mine. Duan Tianxing's voice was filled with excitement. On the other side, the seventh elder also said coldly, Kid, we won't let you get the exceptional sword. Faced with the three people's interception, Lin Xian did not say anything and directly used the dragon catcher hand. Spiritual energy surged and drew out two true dragons. They circled around each other and formed a huge hand that quickly grabbed forward. The dragon catcher hand was said to be able to capture true dragons. At this moment, Lin Xian used it to grab the exceptional divine sword in front of him. Seeing Lin Xian make a move, Duan Tianxing and the other two finally could not hold it in anymore. The three of them quickly charged toward Lin Xian. The three of them were very fast like lightning. Terrifying light rays were like sabers and sword shadows that quickly swept forward. Duan Tianxing's murderous aura soared into the sky. He quickly threw out the Overlord Fist, as if he wanted to punch Lin Xian to death. On the other side, the seventh elder and Zhu Chen joined forces and threw out two huge claws. They emitted a monstrous murderous aura as they quickly grabbed at Lin Xian. The three of them were 8th level supremacies. At this moment, they attacked with all their might. However, in the face of such a terrifying scene, Lin Xian was expressionless. He only made one move, which was to grab the Thousand Beast Cauldron in his hand and swing it forward. Buzz! The absorbed flames in the Thousand Beast Cauldron also surged out quickly. The sea of fire filled the sky. The terrifying flames burned space and time. Countless sea of fire spread and formed waves. In an instant, the attacks from the three of them were burned to ashes in the sea of fire. Not only that, the flames were like illusions of dragons that quickly rushed toward the three of them and enveloped them. Ah, damn it, break for me! Duan Tianxing roared madly. His body glowed brightly as he tried to break free from the terrifying flames. However, they had underestimated these flames. These flames were used by ancient powerhouses to refine peerless weapons. No one below the king level dared to touch them. It was only because Lin Xian had the 10,000 Beast Cauldron that he dared to try and subdue it. The seventh elder and the eighth elder roared madly. Black lines appeared on their bodies and quickly crawled all over their bodies. Then, a ball of black flames burned fiercely and enveloped them, quickly resisting the sea of fire that filled the sky. It was fine without the black flames. But as soon as the black flames appeared, the sea of fire seemed to be enraged. Suddenly, an incomparable radiance blossomed. More and more flames converged toward the two of them, and even Duan Tianxing felt the pressure lessen significantly. Damn it, why is it like this? Seeing this, the seventh elder and Zhu Chen's faces turned extremely ugly. They had only wanted to use the black flames to resist, but they had not expected such an unforeseen event to occur. It was too late for them to withdraw now. This was because the surrounding flames had already completely covered them. If they withdrew the black flames now, the surrounding sea of fire would burn them to ashes. However, if they did not withdraw the black flames, they would attract more and more sea of fire. This was simply a situation of certain death. Therefore, the two of them were destined to die. In the end, they were mercilessly burned to ashes by the sea of fire, leaving nothing behind. Duan Tianxing was lucky enough to escape with his life, but one of his arms was also burned to ashes. 3 great 8th level curses, 2 dead and 1 injured. This scene shocked everyone. In particular, the cultivators from the deity Sword Villa were terrified. Fortunately, their Sword Venerable did not make a move. Otherwise, they would not have ended up well either. In the next moment, everyone looked at the figure in the sky with a horrified expression. This was too shocking. He had directly burned 2 8th level supremacies to death. Probably no one would dare to provoke Lin Xian now, let alone have any ideas about the peerless sword. To be honest, Lin Xian was also very surprised by this result. This was because he could feel the power of this flame, which could threaten an 8th level supremacies. However, it was impossible to completely burn them to death at that time. Of course, this was also the fault of the 2 people from the Divine Bird Palace. They used the black flames to attract the endless sea of fire, which caused this scene. However, this was also good. It saved him a lot of trouble. At least now, no one dared to stop him from obtaining the peerless sword. In the next moment, Lin Xian activated the Thousand Beast Cauldron and put the dark green sword into the cauldron. After doing this, he heaved a sigh of relief. With a flash, Lin Xian returned to the side of Zhao Shui and the others. After taking away the peerless sword, there was no point in staying here any longer. Therefore, he wanted to leave. However, the others did not think so. There were still many treasured swords in the place where the sword was hidden. They were all good things. They still wanted to try. Morong Qingqing did not leave either, because many warriors in her family had not obtained any treasured swords yet. Therefore, Lin Xian and Zhao Shui left first, while the others searched for opportunities here. Lin Xian, where are we going? Zhao Shui asked. Just now, she had also obtained a half-earth level treasure. Although she did not use a sword, she could still get a lot of spirit stones after selling it outside. Let's find a safe place to rest. I want to take a look at the peerless sword over there. Previously, Lin Xian had only put it away and did not look at it carefully. Now that he had time, he must study it carefully. Soon, they found an empty hall, and then the dark red divine dragon set up a defensive array. Lin Xian waved his hand and summoned the Thousand Beast Cauldron again. Suddenly, a hot aura gushed out from the Thousand Beast Cauldron, accompanied by a sharp edge. A dark green longsword slowly appeared and floated in the void. It was like a dark green gem, incomparably deep. However, if one looked closely, they would see that there were countless small cracks on the sword. Not only that, the dark green sword was broken. 1/3 of the sword's tip was missing. It could be said that it was broken beyond repair. However, the aura emitted from it was unusually sharp, far surpassing that of a half-earth level treasure. Even the Lone Star sword could not compare. The dark red divine dragon also looked carefully from the side, then said slowly, "This should be an earth-level treasure, but it is very broken now." "What, you mean this is an earth-level treasure?" Lin Xian was surprised. He did not expect this peerless sword to have such a terrifying origin. He had seen the power of an earth-level treasure before. One had to know that the Thousand Beast Cauldron was an earth-level treasure. Its power was definitely not something they could imagine. Chapter 12:16. However, unlike the 10,000 Beast Cauldron, this sword was severely damaged, so its power was greatly reduced. It was impossible for it to display the true power of an Earth-tier treasure. However, compared to a normal half-Earth-tier treasure, it was still much stronger. To the side, Zhao Shui also used her void sky eyes to observe carefully. She then said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid this sword cannot be used carelessly." "Oh, what did you find?" "There is not much energy left inside. It is barely enough to keep it from breaking. If this energy is released, I'm afraid the entire sword will break. At that time, this Earth-tier treasure will also break." "So that's how it is." Lin Xian was shocked. Zhao Shui's eye technique was unparalleled, so this information should be accurate. Then how many times can this sword be used, if I want to display the sword energy that connected the heaven and earth? "Around 3 times. Zhao Shui carefully observed. 3 times. Lin Xian narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. "It should be enough." "What do you want to do with it?" Zhao Shui asked. "This sword is very powerful. It would be a waste to use it against normal martial artists. What do you think about using it against the heavenly netherbird?" "You want to deal with the heavenly netherbird?" Hearing Lin Xian's words, Zhao Shui was very surprised. The terror of the heavenly netherbird was obvious to all. Even a king-level expert might not be able to take it down. But now Lin Xian wanted to make a move against it. This was very shocking. However, when she thought of Lin Xian's various actions, Zhao Shui felt relieved. However, there was one thing that she was very confused about. Could this sword really hurt the heavenly netherbird?
I don't know if it can hurt it, but one thing is for sure. The heavenly netherbird is very wary of this sword. Otherwise, it would not have sent 2 people from the divine bird palace to steal it. With this sword, the power to deal with the heavenly netherbird would be a lot stronger. The next step was to find the key to the star chain. If he had it in his hand, the heavenly netherbird would be even more wary. Of course, they couldn't let those people break the array. Otherwise, they would be in danger when the heaven netherbird came in. Next, Lin Xian tried to find a way to control the sword. This treasured sword was completely dark green in color. It floated in the air, and on the hilt of the sword, the 2 words Song Song were carved. The Ashen Pine Sword. Could it be that this treasured sword was the weapon used by the peerless powerhouse in the past? When Lin Xian saw these 2 words, his heart also burned with passion. This powerhouse named Song Song was able to suppress even the heavenly netherbird back then. One could imagine how powerful he was. The sword he had left behind was absolutely terrifying. Thinking of this, Lin Xian's eyes burned with passion as he reached for the Ashen Pine Sword. Normally, the Ashen Pine Sword would flicker with light. Although its aura was fierce, it would always be concealed. However, the moment it received a threat from the outside world, the long sword would let out a hum, and dark green sword light would shoot up into the sky. Lin Xian used the phantom of the Red Lotus armor. Even so, he was still hurt by the sword qi. His blood and qi roiled, and cracks appeared on the phantom of the armor. This was only the sword qi emitted by the long sword. If it was controlled by someone else, it would probably be able to split open his Red Lotus armor. As expected of an Earth-rank treasure, it's really terrifying, Lin Xian exclaimed. Other than the complete 10,000 beast cauldron, he didn't have anything else that could compete with the other party. Of course, the Great Dragon Sword Soul was an exception. Feeling the violent sword qi, Lin Xian immediately used the Great Dragon Sword Soul. Streaks of dragon-shaped sword shadows flew forward, emitting deep dragon roars and sword cries. It was amazing. When the sword qi condensed by the Great Dragon Sword Soul wrapped around the Ashen Pine Sword, the latter no longer went berserk. Instead, it calmed down. Seeing this, Lin Xian breathed a sigh of relief. The Great Dragon Sword Soul was indeed an offensive saint art. It was extremely mysterious. Even the powerful Earth-rank treasure sword could only calm down in front of it. Taking a deep breath, countless dragon-shaped sword qi wrapped around his palm. Then Lin Xian grabbed forward. In the next moment he grabbed the Ashen Pine Sword in his hand. This time, the Ashen Pine Sword did not resist. He circulated his spiritual energy slightly, and poured it into the Ashen Pine Sword. Then the Ashen Pine Sword bloomed. Countless green sword qi surged out and instantly dyed the palace green. Success! Seeing this, Zhao Shui also breathed a sigh of relief. Next, they had to find the key to remove the nebula chain. After removing the formation, Lin Xian and Zhao Shui left the remote palace. Not long after they left, they encountered many warriors. The Shen family was leading them. When the people from the Shen family saw Lin Xian, their eyes lit up. They had no choice. Now, everyone knew that the peerless divine weapon was in Lin Xian's hands. That was a peerless divine weapon. It was something left behind by an ancient expert. One could imagine how precious it was. If anyone obtained it, their strength would definitely increase greatly. They could even bring their family to a higher level. This was especially so for the sovereign families. They had to obtain it. So now, they looked at Lin Xian with envy. When Lin Xian saw these people, he knew what they were thinking. He immediately snorted. Suddenly, an extremely dark green sword qi appeared behind him. The green sword qi emitted an extremely terrifying aura. It was like the might of a king. Boom! Feeling this terrifying aura, the warriors in front suddenly trembled. Their eyes were filled with fear. It was as if they were not facing a sword, but an extremely terrifying king. In an instant the 9th, 11th, and 13th young masters all turned pale. This was especially so for the 9th young master. Other than fear, there was also a strong sense of jealousy in his eyes. Of course, under such circumstances, he did not dare to do anything. The elders and elders of the Shen family were all shocked when they saw this scene. How is this possible? How long has it been? He can already control such a peerless divine weapon? They were simply too shocked.
Although peerless divine weapons were powerful, they were not easy to subdue. This was especially true for weapons passed down from ancient times. Some even needed to be refined again. Therefore, in their opinion, although Lin Xian had obtained the peerless divine weapon, he would not be able to control it in a short period of time. This gave them a chance. If they planned carefully, they might be able to snatch the peerless divine weapon back from him. But now they had completely given up. This was because from the current situation, Lin Xian had already controlled the peerless divine weapon. Otherwise, he would not have been able to emit that kind of sword qi. This made them extremely shocked. They could not understand how Lin Xian had managed to subdue the peerless divine weapon in such a short period of time. Chapter 12:17. Young master, let's retreat first. The Shen cult's elder quickly advised. He was afraid that the ninth young master and the rest would rush forward. All right. Facing the terrifying sword Dao Qi, the ninth young master and the rest did not dare to take the risk. They immediately led the group away. Seeing the Shen family's cultivators leave, the surrounding cultivators felt as if they were dreaming. The King family had been scared away without even making a move. Just thinking about it made their blood boil. The King family was the top force in the Tianwu continent. They were existences that everyone could only look up to. But now someone had used his aura to scare away the King family. This was the dream of every cultivator. However, Lin Xian was probably the only one who could do such a thing. Seeing the Shen family leave, Lin Xian felt great. Once upon a time, the King family was like a mountain that he could only look up to. But now, he had grown to the point where he could fight against the King family. Of course, he knew that the King family was terrifying and could not only be this strong, but in the remote sky secret realm, he was not afraid of anyone. Lin Xian's eyes were like lightning as he looked around and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, I want to remind you that we are not enemies." There is no need to fight to the death the moment we meet. Our common enemy is the heavenly nether bird. Don't forget that if we can't find a way in a month, the heavenly nether bird will appear and none of us will be able to survive. Hearing this, many cultivators' faces turned pale, and their bodies trembled. That's right. They had only been fighting for treasures, and had forgotten that they were still in danger. They were still under the threat of the heavenly nether bird. In a month's time, the heavenly nether bird would appear. The heavenly nether bird was extremely terrifying. None of them would be able to stop it. When the heavenly nether bird appeared, they would have no way to survive. Seeing everyone's pale faces, Lin Xian said again, "Of course, you don't have to be so emotional. As long as we find the star chain's key, there might be a glimmer of hope." The star chain's key. That's right. The heavenly nether bird was bound by the mysterious star chain. As long as they found the star chain's key, they would have the qualifications to negotiate with the heavenly nether bird. Thinking of this, everyone's eyes regained their luster. Many of them clenched their fists and swore to find the key to the star chains. Lin Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that everyone's emotions had been roused. The pine hall was actually quite big. If it was just Lin Xian searching by himself, it might have taken a lot of effort. However, things were different now. With so many people searching together, it wouldn't take long for them to find the location of the stellar key. This way, it would save him the trouble of looking for it. When the time came, he would only need to break the array formation. Sure enough, in the following days, other than searching for treasures, they also set off a trend of searching. Because this matter was closely related to everyone's lives, no one dared to be careless. In the end, after everyone's hard work, they ruled out other places, and finally locked onto 2 places. These 2 places were completely different. One was in the north, and the other was in the south. The only thing they had in common was that these 2 places were protected by powerful spirit arrays. They should be the core of the entire Deep Pine Palace. The one in the south was called the Pine Tree Pavilion, and the one in the north was called the Star Pavilion. This news was like a hurricane that instantly spread throughout the entire Pine Palace. In an instant, everyone knew about it. However, these people didn't make a move. Instead, they began to discuss intensely. This was because they didn't have much time left. Moreover, the spirit arrays were so powerful that with their strength, they could only break through one place. As such, it was extremely important to break through the spirit arrays. Many people chose the Star Pavilion because from its name, it was obvious that this pavilion was related to the stellar chains. It was very likely that the key to the stellar chains was hidden inside. Once they had the key, they would have the qualifications to negotiate with the heavenly nether bird. However, there were others who didn't think so. As far as they were concerned, whether or not they could break the astral chains was meaningless to them. This was because even if the heavenly nether bird had the stellar chains, they couldn't contend with it with their strength. As such, breaking through the stellar chains was extremely unimportant. Instead, it was the other pavilion that attracted their attention. The Pine Tree Pavilion. This place was called the Pine Palace, and the sword that Lin Xian obtained was also called the Pine Tree Pavilion. It was obvious that the name Pine Tree was the name of the ancient powerhouse. Since the pavilion was named Pine Tree, it could be said to be the most important place in the entire Pine Palace. Presumably, there was a spirit array defense room that controlled the entire Big Dipper formation. Moreover, according to these people's estimates, the Pine Palace didn't only have a spirit array defense room. There were also other treasures, such as cultivation techniques and secret manuals. This was because after searching for so long in the Pine Palace, they had obtained many heavenly treasures and even weapons. However, they hadn't obtained any cultivation techniques. Thinking about it, those cultivation methods should be hidden in this Pine Palace. As such, these people desperately wanted to enter the Pine Palace. In an instant, the people were divided into 2 factions, and they fought endlessly. Those who supported breaking through the Pine Tree Pavilion were the Palace of War and the Shun clan, the 2 sovereign clans. There were also the Divine Bird Palace and many other rank 6 sects. Those who supported the Star Pavilion were the Morong clan and the Merry Forest. There were also many rank 6 clans supporting them. It could be said that both sides were evenly matched, and no one could convince the other. In the end, these people decided to split up. The Palace of War and the Shun clan led a group of warriors to the Pine Palace in the south. The Morong clan and the Merry Forest teamed up to break through the Star Pavilion in the north. After Lin Xian heard this news, he narrowed his eyes. However, in the end he chose to go to the Star Pavilion. This was because even if they found the Spirit Array defense room, they wouldn't be able to stop the Heavenly Netherbird. If that was the case, it would be better to find the key to break through the star chain. Lin Xian brought the dark red divine dragon and flew towards the Star Pavilion with Zhao Shui. Not long after, they saw a blue pagoda. The pagoda was tall and majestic. The material on the outside was like the stars, shining brightly. Not only that, they also saw a complicated spirit array that covered the entire Star Pavilion. In other words, they could only enter if they broke through the spirit array. Everyone, we can only break through the spirit array if we work together. Morong Qingcheng's expression was very serious. After that, the Morong clan and the Merry Forest sent out spirit array masters. They worked together with other warriors who were proficient in spirit arrays and began to research a common way to break through the spirit array. Chapter 12:18. At the same time, the God of War Palace and the Shen family also arrived at the Pine Pavilion in the north. It was a very simple and unadorned pavilion. It gave off an ancient and desolate aura, as well as a terrifying pressure. That kind of pressure even surpassed that of a king. This made these people very excited. A secret manual left behind by an ancient expert was definitely a rare treasure. If they could obtain one or two of it, their strength would definitely increase greatly. Thinking of this, these people were also excited and quickly formed a team to crack it. In an instant, both sides were in full swing. On the Star Pavilion's side, the dark red dragon held his chin and continued to study. Lin Xian's expression was also serious as he said in a deep voice, "It seems that this array is not inferior to the Big Dipper array outside. Indeed, it is not as simple as the Big Dipper array outside." The dark red dragon nodded. "But this time, our situation is better because we still have enough time." Although they were under threat now, they still had a month's time. They were not like last time when they were under the Heaven Netherbird's feet. They believed that with the dark red dragon's ability, they should be able to crack it. If that's the case,
Then we won't delay any longer. Lin Xian stopped his work and said loudly, "Everyone, how is your research going? This array is too exquisite. As expected of an ancient array. Yeah, I have never seen such a profound array in my life. It will be very difficult to crack it. Why don't you let me think about it?" The group of array masters looked troubled. Indeed, with their strength, it was too difficult to crack this ancient array. However, they all looked at Lin Xian and said, "Kid, how did you enter the Big Dipper array last time?" "Yeah, we couldn't even crack that array. How did you get in? Are you an array master? Or do you have an array master with you?" Everyone looked at Lin Xian with suspicion. However, Lin Xian smiled. "I do have an array master with me. If you can listen to his orders, you might be able to crack this array quickly." "What? There really is an array master? Where is he? Hurry and ask him to come out. This old man must learn well from him." The group of formation grandmasters were all excited. It couldn't be helped. The other party was an array formation grandmaster that could break the Big Dipper formation. His strength far surpassed theirs. If they could befriend such a person, perhaps their array formation standards would increase greatly. This was an opportunity that might not be encountered even in 100 years. Therefore, these people were abnormally excited. "All right, Ruffian Dragon, it's your turn," Lin Xian said as he waved his hand. "All right, I'll reluctantly teach them." The dark red dragon walked out with its head held high, and its chest puffed out. "Since you have sincerely asked for my guidance, this emperor will be merciful and tell you. That's right, I am that formation master." Puff! Hearing this, everyone's saliva sprayed out, especially those array masters. All of them widened their eyes, and their beards curled up. "Brat, you dare to tease this old man. Damned snake, how dare you take advantage of me?" The group of formation masters stomped their feet in anger. Seeing this scene, the dark red dragon was also unhappy. A group of ignorant humans. This is really infuriating. You don't cherish such a good opportunity. Seeing so many array masters arguing with a snake, the surrounding people were all stunned. "Lin Xian, what the hell are you doing?" The elders were also very confused. However, Lin Xian shrugged, pointed at the dark red dragon and said, "I told you, this is the formation master you're looking for." Hearing this, those array masters were so angry that their noses became crooked. Fine. I want to see what kind of tricks a snake can play. Brat, I'm really angry. If you don't give me a reasonable explanation today, don't blame me for not letting you go. A snake knows about formations? Are you dreaming? Don't tell me you haven't woken up yet. The group of people didn't believe it. The dark red dragon was so angry that it stomped its feet. Then it turned around and pointed at the formation in front of it. "Do you know what formation this is? This is the Migra's flight formation. This formation has a total of 124 variations. Among them there are only 2 life gates. The other places are all death grounds. If you take a wrong step, you'll be doomed eternally. Moreover, this formation absorbs the power of the stars and contains the 5 elements art. It can be said to be very complicated. It's not something you people can understand." The dark red dragon's words silenced those array masters, and the surrounding warriors looked at each other. Judging from the other party's boastful manner, it didn't seem like a liar. Could it really be an array master? But how was that possible? A snake was actually an array master? They couldn't accept this. Those array masters were very shocked, because what the dark red dragon said was completely correct. They had never even heard of some of them. "Then what method do you have to crack it?" an old man asked in a trembling voice. "Use the twin yin-yang formation, and the reverse 5 elements art to crack it," the dark red dragon said snappily. "I reckon you don't know these 2 things at all. You might not even have heard of them." This time, those array masters didn't mock it. Instead, they were shocked. Then they all screamed, "What? The twin yin-yang formation? That's a lost formation. You really know the twin yin-yang formation?" Those old men were very excited. They only knew the reverse 5 elements art, and the twin yin-yang formation was only heard of in legends. But they had never seen it before. Now there was actually a snake that knew the twin yin-yang formation. They couldn't help but be shocked and puzzled at the same time. The dark red dragon curled its lips, then stretched out its dragon claws, and waved them in the air. Suddenly, 2 balls of black and white gas appeared on the dragon claws. They kept spinning and finally formed a yin-yang image. That's right. It's really the twin yin-yang formation. This scene is exactly the same as in the legends. Great God, you're really a great God. Senior, I've offended you just now. Please don't take offense. Great God, are you still taking in disciples? What do you think of me? It's okay if you don't take in disciples. I can be your underling. I can even serve tea. At this moment, a group of array formation masters had gathered around the dark red divine dragon and were shrieking. The surrounding martial artists were all dumbfounded. That was an array master. He was an existence that all the major forces treated like a guest of honor. Normally, he was also highly respected. But now they didn't look like masters at all. They looked like a group of children. The elders from the Moron clan and Merry Woods twitched their mouths. Chapter 12:19. Alright, stop arguing. Line up properly. The dark red dragon god waved his hand impatiently. Alright, great God, well listen to you. On the other hand, the dark red divine dragon was proud. Not bad, not bad. The surrounding people's jaws dropped even further. I want mistreat you. Were they still array masters? With the dark red divine dragon's command, they were more obedient than the disciples. And the rest didn't have to do anything. It was not that they did not understand. They just quietly cultivated. But the world was changing too quickly. No one knew what was going on in the star pavilion. Satisfaction. It had been 7 days since they started to crack the array. Next, they had also cracked more than half of the array in front of them. If I'm satisfied, after another 3 days, I can teach you a thing or two. The array in front of them was finally broken. Hearing this, the array masters were excited. It's finally broken. Great God, dark red divine dragon was like an old monster as he roared nonstop. All right, let's cut to the chase. The array masters also waved their dragon god commanded.
Godly
You
skill.
stand in the
It's really
direction of the
godly.
fire gate.
Oh my God!
You stand in the direction of the water gate
with my own hands.
You stand in the
I'm not
direction of
dreaming,
the
am
earth
I?
gate.
Just this
The dark red
experience
dragon
alone
god
is enough for
commanded
me to
quickly,
brag about for
very
the rest
quickly.
of my life.
The array masters
stood
were too
excited.
excited. The people
Next,
around them
use
were
the
even
reverse
more
5
shocked.
elements
They
technique
didn't
to break
expect
it.
to crack the
They'll use
ancient
the
array
twin
in just
yin
10
formation
days.
to help you.
This was much
With
better
that,
than they had
the
expected.
dark red dragon god
Since
waved
it's
his
cracked,
dragon claws.
let's go in and formed
Lin
a
Xian
black
stood
and
up.
white array.
His eyes
in
were
the next
shining.
moment,
After
the array
that,
masters
the group
worked
of people
together and
carefully
quickly
moved
broke
forward.
it. As
At the
time
same
passed,
time,
the
there
chi
was
in the
good news
entire
from
hidden
the
sky
Pine
secret
Pavilion.
realm became tense.
Everyone, we
This
finally
was
found
because
a way
they did
to
not
crack
have
it.
much time
I
left.
believe that as
Soon,
long as we work
the
together,
heavenly Netherbird
we
would
will
break
definitely
the big
be able
Dipper
to
Seven
crack
Stars
it.
formation
One of the
outside
array
and
masters
enter
roared
the Pine
excitedly.
Palace.
It
When
wasn't
that
easy.
time came,
They had
it
thought
would be
about
their
it for 10
doomsday.
days.
As for
and their
whether
hair
they
had
could stop
turned
the
white.
heavenly Netherbird,
Finally, they came
would
up with a
depend on their
solution.
luck.
Duan
At the Pine
Tianxing
Palace,
and the others
the
were
array
also
masters
excited.
from the God of
They
War
said
Palace,
anxiously,
and the
no
Shen
matter
family
what method
led
we
a group
use,
of people
we
to
must
quickly
break the
study
array.
it. If you have
However,
any
they did not
requests,
make any
just tell us.
substantial progress.
We will definitely
Up
help
ahead,
you.
a
They were
group of
too
formation
excited
masters
because not only
surrounded
was there
the
an array
extremely
control
profound
room
formation
inside the Pine
and sighed
Pavilion,
incessantly,
but there were
some
also
of them even
countless
pulled out their
cultivation
hair.
technique manuals.
How is it?
Those were
Still
the
no
real
clue?
peerless treasures.
Duan Tianxing asked.
Not only could they enjoy
At this
them,
moment, he was
but
still
they could
tall
also
and
bring them
straight,
back for their
but his
family
empty
disciples
sleeve was
to
a little
learn and
desolate.
strengthen their family.
This was the arm that was burned
Those
off in the
idiots
battle
still
with
want to
Lin
crack the
Xian.
Star Pavilion.
Although he still
What's
had
in
an
there?
undying
How
golden
can it
pill,
compare to the
he
Pine
did not
Pavilion?
dare to use it.
That's right,
Because he still
those
had
are
to face the
cultivation
heavenly
technique
Netherbird.
manuals left
He had
behind
to
by
save
an
his
ancient
life at the
powerhouse.
last moment.
If I can learn
Therefore,
them,
this arm
I will
had not grown
definitely
out
be
yet.
able to defeat
However,
Lin Xian.
it was clear
Yan
that
Feng
Duan
gritted his
Tianxing was
teeth.
not in the mood
Until
to care
now,
about his
he had
arm.
not fully
He
recovered
stared
from
straight
his
ahead
injuries.
and asked about the
It was
array
all thanks to
formation.
Lin Xian.
The array master
Therefore,
from the
when he
palace
thought of
Aries
that
shook his
figure,
head and
he
sighed.
was filled with murderous
It's not that we don't
intent.
want to break it.
It was laughable
but we
that
really
they
don't
didn't know
have a
that
clue.
Lin Xian
This array
and
is
the
too
others
profound.
had already entered
It's
the
an
Star
ancient array.
Pavilion.
I'm
If
afraid
they knew,
ITLL
they
be
would
difficult
probably
for
be
us
in
to
the
break
mood to
it.
cry.
But don't
On
worry,
the other
we found
side,
some clues.
Lin Xian
We
led the
should be
group
able
into
to
the
take
Star
action in
Pavilion.
a few days.
It had to be said
Okay,
that the
you
Star
have to hurry.
Pavilion was indeed
You must
magical.
break the formation
After
before
they
the
entered,
Heaven Serene
they
Bird
found that they
comes
didn't
in.
believe in
Duan
the pavilion
Tianxing
at all.
said in a deep voice. Don't worry, we won't joke around with our lives. However, whether or not it can be broken will depend on the will of the heavens. The array master from the Palace of Gods of War sighed. Then he walked forward and continued his research. Unlike the gloomy atmosphere at Deep Pine Hall, the Star Pavilion on the other side was in full swing. Under the lead of the dark red divine dragon, a group of array masters began to crack the array. Soon, they were able to break through the formation like a hot knife through butter. Haha, great God, you're too strong. You can even break such an ancient array. That's right, senior. I have a whole new level of respect for you. I didn't expect your technique to be so exquisite. I didn't expect it to be like this. I feel like I've wasted all these years. The group of array masters was very excited. They were as excited as children. Beneath their feet and the ceiling were all blue. It was as if countless stars were twinkling in the sky. The surrounding walls were incomparably deep, and there were shooting stars streaking across from time to time. It was as if they had entered a boundless starry sky instead of a tall building. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. It's like a real starry sky. The group was amazed. Chapter 1220. In the next moment, his heart skipped a beat, as though a bolt of lightning flashed past. These stars don't seem ordinary. Lin Xian looked at the starry sky around him carefully, and seemed to have realized something. Both of you try to feel it. Maybe you'll find something, Lin Xian said to Morong Qingqing and Zhao Shui. The two of them believed in Lin Xian's words, and tried to feel the starry sky around them carefully. You don't say. I did find something, Morong Qingqing said as she blinked her beautiful eyes. Yeah, I also felt a mysterious power. Zhao Shui nodded. The dark red divine dragon also looked around and said, Kid, this place is very strange. It seems like there's only this space. You mean there's nothing else but this starry sky? Lin Xian asked. Yes, the entire star pavilion is filled with this starry sky. Other than that, there's nothing else. If we want to find the key to the star chain, we'll have to start from this starry sky. Soon, everyone knew about the mysteries of the starry sky. Then, some people were pleasantly surprised. They were happy because the space was very mysterious and had a mysterious power. As long as they tried to feel it, they might gain something. But they were worried because it would be difficult to find the key to the star chain in such a mysterious place. But no matter what, they had to give it a try. So, many people sat cross-legged and tried to feel the starry sky around them. Many people even tried to feel the existence of the key to the starry sky. Lin Xian put his hands behind his back and looked around. Looking at the boundless starry sky, he was filled with emotions. Gradually, his horizons were broadened, especially the meteors that flashed by. It reminded him of a sword move, meteors from the heavens. Could it be that the starry sky map here contains a martial arts technique? Lin Xian's heart jumped because he realized that the meteors were similar to his sword move. They were so fast and flashed by. They were dazzling but short-lived. Maybe it's possible. Lin Xian kept looking. Gradually, he found some patterns in the meteors, as if the stars were moving along a certain path. The meteors seemed to have turned into swords, flying through the sky like a rain of swords. Gradually, Lin Xian entered a state of selflessness. Not only him, but Morong Qingqing and Zhao Shui had also entered a mysterious state. Even the dark red dragon was grinning widely. Everyone seemed to have gained something from the starry sky. In the blink of an eye, another 5 days had passed. On this day, Lin Xian suddenly awoke from his comprehension, and clarity returned to his eyes. Then, he took a deep breath and a boundless aura erupted from his body. It was like a sea of stars incomparably deep. As Lin Xian moved, Morong Qingqing and Zhao Shui also opened their eyes. I seem to have sensed a mysterious power of stars. I wonder what you guys have sensed. Morong Qingqing asked. Eyes of stars. Those eyes seemed to contain a mysterious power. Zhao Shui's eyes sparkled. Lin Xian, on the other hand, saw a sword technique. It was as vast as a sea of stars. What I saw was the Big Dipper formation. The dark red dragon also joined in. Hearing these different answers, everyone fell silent and fell into deep thought. It seems that the starry sky is even more mysterious than we thought. It can let us see different things. Moreover, these things are very suitable for us. Zhao Shui sighed. As expected of something left behind by an ancient peerless powerhouse. It's really mysterious. Morong Qingqing was also very shocked. Lin Xian was a little worried, because he still hadn't found any trace of the Stardust Chain key. Was there really a Stardust Chain key here? The surrounding people also had the same doubts. Although they had obtained many benefits, they still hadn't found the most important key. If you want to find the key, you have to walk out of this starry sky. At this moment, Zero's voice sounded. Walk out of this starry sky? How? Lin Xian was puzzled. That will depend on your own comprehension. After saying that, Zero went silent. My own comprehension and walk out of this starry sky. Hearing this, Lin Xian pondered. This starry sky was in the star pavilion. Walking out of the star pavilion meant walking out of this starry sky. However, Zero obviously didn't mean that. Moreover, it was impossible for there to be a key outside the star pavilion. In other words, if he had to walk out of this starry sky, he had to be in the star pavilion. Only then could he find the most important key. It seemed that there were other spaces in the star pavilion other than this starry sky. It was just that they hadn't been discovered yet. After figuring this out, Lin Xian's gaze was like a sword as he quickly scanned his surroundings. However, he only saw a boundless night sky. Everyone, I don't know if you have a way to walk out of this starry sky. In the end, Lin Xian told everyone about this, so that they could collectively think of a way. In the following period of time, everyone tried to walk out of this starry sky. Some people ran madly in one direction, but in the end, they realized that they were still under the starry sky. It was as if the starry sky was boundless and was truly a vast universe. No, we can't run out at all. This starry sky can't be an independent space, right? If that's really the case, who knows how big this space is? I just flew for a while. With my speed, I can already fly out of the Pine Palace. However, I still can't fly out of this starry sky. Could this be a real starry sky? Everyone was extremely surprised, because they couldn't think of a way to walk out of this starry sky. Of course, other than exiting the Star Pavilion. Even the older generation members of the King clans were frowning. Could it be that there's also a formation inside, similar to an illusion formation? Although we're running in one direction, under the effects of the formation, we're just going in circles on the spot. A formation master proposed such an idea. It's possible. This is definitely an illusion formation. Hearing this, many people nodded in agreement because this was the only way that made sense. However, the dark red divine dragon shook his head. It's not a formation because I don't feel the power of a formation. This should be an even more mysterious existence. Who was the dark red divine dragon? He was a formation master, and the person who led them here. Therefore they believed his words. Everyone believed him without a doubt. If it's not a formation, then what is it? Everyone was puzzled. Then, they stayed here again for 3 days and 3 nights to study carefully. However, they still didn't find anything. Not only that, but they also encountered new trouble. Oh no, we can't find the way back. Damn it, that door is gone. What? The door is gone? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.